What's
Welcome.
game theory?
Ooh, Mr. Mace, the capitalist extraordinaire.
I've never heard of game theory. What does it mean?
Um, Game theory is the simplest way I could put it is a revision to Adam Smith's uh, selfish actions of individuals leading to the best outcome of the market. To to the it takes that and extends it into from away from a pure theory of competition into a theory of cooperation and competition, and defines mathematically the mechanisms by which human beings compete in whatever thing that they're competing in. It's first developed in economics, but has been applied to many other fields. Any questions from that? Travis, are we live? Are we recording? I hope so. Um, so Mace, when I give you that introduction to game theory, um, does it spark any questions?
No, I don't really get it. Sorry.
So um, it describes a number of actors in a game and how to come about with the Nash equilibrium. So the easiest way to understand it is with the two-player game. So there's a very popular two-player game that you can Google. It's called The Prisoner's Dilemma, and it develops a two-player payoff matrices where you can see how if each actor acted purely in their own self-interests, it would lead to a less ideal outcome, and that the more ideal outcome is achieved through cooperation, i.e., not purely making the best decision in your own interests, not taking anyone else into account, but taking into account um, the best decision of the other player, and then making your best decision based with that information. So it's not quite acting purely in your own self-interest. It attempts to describe how people cooperate in when they're seeking competition in something. Does that sort of get you any close to some sort of understanding?
So you're saying when you say they act in a way that's not in their self-interest, you mean not in their immediate self-interest, but it is in their self-interest in the long term. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I suppose that's another way of putting it. Long-term selfish behavior versus short-term selfish behavior.
Okay.
So if you go to where's live Pangburn philosophy, I'll post a picture of. Oh, it's not what I wanted to post. Um, the image. Here we go. Okay, so that's a basic two-player payoff matrices. So you can see that the best outcome if they both cooperate, right? Then they both go to jail for 3 years. That's the top left-hand corner. So player one is playing the column on the left. Player two is playing the column on the right. So the red column versus the blue column. So if they both cooperate, they both get 3 years. If however, if player one doesn't cooperate, does cooperate, but player two defects, you see player one gets 0 years and player two gets 5 years, and vice versa. But if they both choose not to cooperate, they both only get 1 year. So the best outcome there, the Nash equilibrium, is the bottom right hand corner. But without information, which is sort of a key critical understanding, to facilitate the cooperation, you more often than not end up with the top left hand scenario, where with both people cooperating and each getting in equal term, as it were.
Well, what's this a metaphor for?
So this is just to show off the payoff matrices for game theory. Now, that's a 2-player game, right? Once you get to a 3-player game, you've got 9 sort of squares. It's a 3x3. And a 4-player game is a 4x4 with extra dimensions. And as you increase up, the payoff matrices get more and more and more complex. So what the Nash equilibria does is it attaches probabilities to scenarios. So in a 1-player game, you're obviously cooperating with yourself and you have perfect information. So you're gonna grind that, and that's basically a monopoly. In a 2-player game, which is a duopoly, so like 2 people producing it, 2 main players in the industry, the Nash equilibria works out to roughly an 87% incentive to cooperate with a 13% incentive to cheat. And cheating in this case is breaking the agreement. So in a commercial relationship, if you and I are both producing iron rods and there's a market capacity for 500 iron rods, the best outcome for both of us is if we cooperate. You produce 250 and I produce 250. And let's say it costs us $100 to make, and we both agree that we'll charge $200, right? Now, we're both making a $100 profit. We're at homeostasis. This is called the Pareto optimum, where people are in agreement and working together. When they are not in agreement and they cheat and they break this agreement, and in a 2-player game, there's only roughly a 13% probability of breaking that negotiated settlement between the 2 companies. And that's mostly because when you cheat, it's very obvious who cheats, right? So in that same scenario, we're both selling for $200. I start selling at one store for $190, and obviously because we're offering the same product, and I'm offering at 190 and you're offering at 200, I'm going to eat at your market share. So instead of me selling 250 of the 500 in the market share, maybe I'm selling 300 or 325 of the 500. So you notice that you're selling less and you're losing out money now. So obviously it's clear that I'm cheating. You know that it's me that's eating market share, and I've broken our agreement. So usually in a duopoly system, you get quite a bit of collaboration because the incentive to cheat is very low. Now, how this applies to sort of corporate abuse is we know that you get corporate abuse and price gouging and low quality products when you're in a monopolistic system or an oligopolistic system. An oligopolistic system being 2 to 4 players, a monopoly system being 1 player. And so what we're trying to do, what the Nash equilibria does, is once you get to 6 players, it shows that the mathematical probability of cooperation and collusion, which is required in business to price gouge and do all this corporate abuse, to achieve that with when you have 6 or more players in the sector, becomes very difficult because the incentive to cheat and undercut the price and break the agreement is almost 100%, and the incentive to cooperate is right down to 0%. So yeah, I'll leave it there. There's a bit more to it, but are you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. So how this relates to corporate abuse is in antitrust law cases and competition commission cases. I think that's what they call it in Europe. They use this formula to work out if there's possible price collusion in a market. So they'll focus their investigations on industries with 6 or less players, presuming that industries with 6 or more players will naturally have enough incentive to cheat and break cooperation agreements that they won't have to worry about any collusion or price fixing or any sort of abuse of the market. Which means where would we expect to see abuses, right? We'd expect to see abuses in markets where you have less than 6 key actors. So when you look at the labor market, right, there's literally at least 100 people that can do any job that's available on the planet, which means that the labor market is pretty much a market where people are offering the highest quality labor at the cheapest price, because that's the product or service they're offering. Um, and there's many people competing in that. So what we're trying to achieve here is a free market mechanism where there are so many actors in a given industry that the incentive to cooperate is brought down to 0%, and then therefore the only way for them to compete is to engage in free market competition, which is to either increase the quality of your product or decrease the price to gain market share over your competition. And it's via these mechanisms that we see the increase in quality and decrease in price of private consumer goods managed in private hands. And where I see the issue is with government regulation, because across the entire world's industries, I can't think of a single example where we see clear corporate abuse, where they're abusing their employees or they're abusing labor practices or they're doing something unethical. Um, I literally cannot think of an example where that's happened, where there's 6 or more key main producers in that industry. Um, and all the problems we seem to have are in industries where there's specifically less than 6 actors, but most of the problematic ones are less than 4 actors, because when you have 1 to 4 actors, your incentive to cooperate is greater than 50%. So the likelihood of cooperation, collusion, and price fixing is high.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
Right.
in essence, it's a mathematical proof for why government regulation is bad. Like if we want to end sort of crony capitalism, the solution is to deregulate sectors and let the mechanism of free market competition provide the mechanism of regulation. Because when you take away government regulation, you take away a barrier to entry, but you don't take away people's concerns about a product or service. I mean, the regulators there obviously because consumers have a concern. So just because the government regulator goes doesn't mean another regulator, private sector regulator, won't step in. They probably step in and do it a lot more, a lot cheaper and with greater efficiency than the government can. And because that would be their course of business, you'd have self-regulation, not the same company regulating the same company, but private companies, separate private companies regulating each other. And we sort of see this in sectors that aren't government regulated. Like when you, with all the sort of quality assurance and sales reviews and all the sort of quality assurance YouTubers that you see pop up, they popped up and they are popular because there's a demand for product quality review, specifically in spaces where there are no government regulators. And it's arguably product review that is better than what the government could do. It's much higher level of quality assurance. It costs the business that is manufacturing the product nothing, so there's no barrier to entry, and the private consumer gets the sort of quality assurance that they're seeking. So if you want to end corporate cronyism, then the obvious solution by game theory appears to me to be to decrease the barriers to entry into a market as much as possible so that you can at all costs get 6 key main producers in the sector, because then you get free market competition and an increase in quality and a decrease in price. And I mean, people say, but how does that relate to like sort of abuses, right? When it comes to labor, like obviously to produce the best quality product, you need the best labor. So if your labor is leaving you, the quality of your product is going to go down. So it might take a little time for the sort of tweaking to come to labor, because usually it comes to things like machines and products and sort of what your input products and are. But the level at which point increasing the quality of your product means increasing the quality of your labor, and to increase the quality of your labor, you obviously need to pay more, you need to treat people better, you need to attract the best talent in the business. So there's a whole bunch of downstream positives that happen once you get into a true space of the free market. But the difficult thing is anything less than a true free market, and you get corporate cronyism, which is pretty much what what game theory says mathematically.
Yeah, and so it is a good predictor of that, and it has to be taken as a general rule, not an absolute rule, because Canadian healthcare system.
So there's sort of two. It addresses the one prerequisite for monopolistic abuses is the probability of cooperation and price gouging. What it doesn't address is the other side, and it's a recent phenomenon that we've seen with the market, with the rise of the internet, in that there's the producer side, but there's also the consumer side of the free market.
Right.
So if you're in a marketplace and you have the majority of the market and you have the monopoly power, there's still a question now that's specific to the internet of if you can abuse that monopoly power. So there's the difference between having the power and then having the ability to use it. And this has been delineated with the rise of the internet. Because if you're, say, a butcher and you own all the butcheries in a given state, for someone to go and buy meat not from you, they have to travel out of state. That's a prohibitive cost. So you now have a captive market.
Right.
So you can price gouge up to the point where it's cheaper for someone to drive out of state, buy their product, and then come back into state. So you can pretty much add the price of gas onto the price of your food, and you can price gouge like that. However, with the internet, the cost of switching is zero. I mean, WhatsApp put up this thing saying, we now want to scrape all your contacts and break all your privacy. And literally in the space of 3 weeks, Signal, which advertises that it has a respect for privacy and does end-to-end encryption, true end-to-end encryption, not server end to client end like WhatsApp does. We saw Signal, which for years was on like 5 to 10 million users. Literally within like 3-4 weeks, they had 50+ million users.
Yeah.
And it's because WhatsApp did something that the consumer side of the free market didn't want. And they don't have a captive market. People immediately switch to a service provider that was willing to provide what they want. So it seems unique to the internet specifically that because the cost of switching providers is zero, the ability, while a software company can monopolize the market, they can't exercise control over that market. You also see it with YouTube. When the whole YouTube apocalypse happened, few people know this, but if you check the public statements of Google, YouTube has been bleeding money ever since 2016. There's a reason they're bringing in subscribers. They're looking to get out of the advertising revenue model because it's just costing them too much at this point with all the video nuking that they've been doing.
Yeah.
So they're doing something the market doesn't like, and the market's abandoning them. They've opened up space for things like BitChute and Mixer and a whole bunch of different platforms that are gaining market share while YouTube's losing market share.
Wait, explain why is YouTube ruining their own business?
It's a complicated problem. So on the one side of the argument, this is the argument against. YouTube is censoring people of a certain political disposition, and it relates to them losing money, and people seem to think that it's this general thought process of wanting to push a political agenda. At least that's what it appears in the first world, right? But on the other side of the arguments, the algorithm that they use to provide useful videos to people, the next video suggestion, tends to tunnel people into specific ways of thinking. They get stuck in echo chambers. And this has presented very dangerously in third world countries in Africa and Asia and South America, where people have spiraled down that next video thing and they become radicalized, and it's end up in the death of people, and it's presented a real problem, right? So on the one hand, you've got people saying this is an anti-free speech issue and they've got no right censoring free speech, and they're abusing net neutrality in Section 230, and they've got too much power, which I think is a very reasonable argument. On the other hand, what I think is more the case, more true, is you have this company that's come up with this amazing algorithm to search their video content subscribers that generates views and ad revenue, and they don't want to sacrifice it, but it's clearly spiraling out in a negative way in certain areas, and their ad hoc attempts to fix it are sort of damaging their reputation. So they're trying to do good while preserving their company profits. The obvious solution seems be something to do with adjusting their algorithm. It would mean they make less money, but at least it won't have the strong negative spiraling effect that has given rise to all the censorship we're seeing on the YouTube platform. So it's a difficult thing because YouTube can't continue to operate like they are and make the money that they are without censoring and doing something about the problem they're creating. But on the other side of that, it's ending up in censoring of political actors, say in the developed world, that who are saying things that aren't leading to mass killings and murders like they are in the third world. So it's quite a tricky issue.
I don't understand how that's making them lose money, though. I thought the reason that they were censoring political videos was because companies didn't want their adverts to be associated with right-wing politics.
Oh, there's certainly, I'm sure there's an element of that. But you got to admit that people like Alex Jones, they bring a lot of viewership. And there are enough companies out there that don't care about the political leanings of their consumers to be featured on that. So when they censor Alex Jones loses out and they lose out because they don't have his viewership driving revenue anymore.
Yeah.
I believe Mr. Pangburn has been a recent recipient of this treatment.
Yes, it's been 6 months without a review. And then YouTube tells me on Twitter publicly that we hope someone reviews you soon, as though it has nothing to do with them.
What I do have to say, it's not also necessarily about the amount of views. It's about the time spent viewing each thing. You know, I mean, that's probably your biggest factor. So what Facebook and these companies have done is they've tried to figure out a way to say, okay, we can get these people engaged for longer and longer periods of time. And that's when money does come into it. Now, if you take those people being engaged for longer periods of time, your ad revenue is going to drop off substantially.
Yeah, so with mine, it's like my channel makes money because of the long live event ad revenue that I have on the channel. That's like the key to making money for my channel, at least.
So the I think there's like rules where you can only be monetized if you have things longer than 15 minutes, or they've got some sort of minimum threshold. But basically, their big money makers are political commentators and people that might not be political commentators, but do commentate on the issues on the side. So a lot of people, you'll find a lot of scientists that say a scientifically true thing, but gets washed up in the political narrative. People like that get taken off. So people like Jordan Peterson, he didn't come at it from a political point of view for the most part, most of his YouTube stuff. But it just happened that his research and his field of study provided some commentary on the political landscape, and he ended up being censored for that.
No, I think Jordan Peterson was very aware of the opportunity he had in front of himself to make money.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't doubt that. I mean,
because if you look at like everything that happened after that confrontation at the school, it's been that like he realized like, okay, I can make money off this. He's written books, he's done all this kind of stuff, went on touring events, So
he said as much. Like, I mean, as you know, well, I'm sure you know, he's a big fan of the Bible, and he said in a couple of interviews that he found himself with this opportunity, and he must make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
So
but I don't know. Do you think he's a fan of the Bible? I don't.
Yeah.
I've never picked that up off of him personally. I think he might say like there are certain like mythologies, but I don't think he's ever necessarily said it's just the Bible and that there aren't other mythologies that are worthwhile, right? I mean, to me, it's sort of like he takes in all that in one basket, not calling out. Yeah.
If I understand him correctly, he perceives Christianity as the latest iteration of many sort of evolutions of religious thought, and I think he thinks it's the prime leader. It results in the best construction of society, as it were. So you're right. He doesn't.
Yeah, I see. I don't know. I guess I've. I guess I've taken a different opinion of that. Well, not necessarily that he thinks it's the best, and more along the lines that he's in the West, and this is the most prominent, so that's what he's going to use. And I do think there is a difference in that distinction between saying, "Hey, this is the best one," or "This is the one that's most prominent in the group of people that I'm in, so I'm going to use that as the best example."
Well, that is the predominant way you evaluate moral claims, is how they propagate society over time, and it's quite good.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, like, I don't think morals are specifically based on the society that you're in. I mean,
no, but that's the claim that Jordan Peterson makes, is that all the sort of complex decision making that is given rise to from a base set of morals, and like this is how you approach moral philosophy. Like you weigh up the moral claims, the bottom of it, that sort of underpin everything, the foundation, and see what sort of complex society that produces. And from that perspective, you can see how the Judeo-Christian ethic has produced societies that have propagated over time.
Yeah, but see, I think this is where you get into a huge problem. I asked this on the channel the other day about, can anybody explain what Judeo-Christian values are? And when I say that, like, what I want to hear is, can you explain to me any value that was not had prior or separate from Judeo and Christian that could not fit the same thing? And I've never seen that demonstrated. It's not like all of a sudden you're pointing to a different community and these people are just absolutely the worst, and like they wouldn't survive, they wouldn't keep existing if they were just doing all this crazy shit.
I mean, it's one of the key moral precepts of it's less a moral claim, more sort of it's the right word. It's not a moral claim. It's more of an allegorical story that places the word, the spoken word, as the highest order. So God spoke the world into existence. That places speech as the sort of prime consideration, and a lot of people take that
Yep.
as sort of primacy for freedom of speech, but you'll find that in United
No.
States culture, you'll find that in England and all across Europe, the sort of value of truth speaking, that concept
Ooh.
is
So
always been a moral value of many mythologies.
I
But
think
but hold on. That was in opposition to the church, though. I mean, like, let's be real. Like, when you look at
Well,
the
that is
ideas
one
of
of the
free speech and democracy, these are not Judeo-Christian values. They're Greco-Roman values. Right? I mean, like, everything that I've ever looked up and I can find anywhere, these are where these values came to be
yeah,
in
but
Greek and Rome.
they're primarily different from the Eastern values, which has no concept of the sovereign individual.
No, that's not true. That's not true. It's the same thing. Like, people will try to say the same thing about Native Americans.
Well-
Like, they had no idea of property. Bull fucking shit. Like,
one
it
thing,
takes
yeah. Sorry.
it takes 2 minutes of actual research to find out. But, like, oh no, Native Americans did actually have an idea of property.
Yeah.
It was just different.
So I think what I want to throw in here is that I find in my research and talking with lots of people who say that they have Judeo-Christian values, when they list, let's say, the top 10 things of what those are, I feel like that list changes almost from person to person, and
Every
and
time.
even if you want
Yep.
even if you want to say from segregation to segregation, like within the
Yep.
church, and this is why we have so many branches of like Calvinism, Catholicism, all these things, because the Catholics are going to have a different list.
What's really interesting is the idea of Judeo-Christian values was actually a political marketing scheme that came up probably in the 50s. And you can go back and look up the history of it. But when it first came out, like, people on both sides, Jews and Christians, were like, no, fuck that. We're different for a reason. We don't believe in Christ. There is we are fucking separate. And it's strange to me that over time it's built into this thing that is sort of it's a right-wing mantra. It comes down to being something that the right wing has taken in as a political ideology, and I think that's why it persists.
Yeah. But look, we're getting a bit off track here. Let's take a right turn back to the topic here. No, we got a couple more people. So we're talking game theory. Game theory, for those of you that don't know, was invented by, built on. It's hard to say invented. It was built on by John Nash. He sort of revised Adam Smith's statement that the best actions, the result for society comes from everyone pursuing their own self-interest. And John Nash proved mathematically that that's not the case, that the best decision is the decision you take given the other players in the game, and assuming they'll make the best decision for them. So it's a mathematical truth for cooperation within a competitive framework. So the angle I wanted to sort of bring this into, what a lot of people have requested this topic for, is how this sort of addresses problems with capitalist markets. So people are quite right when they point to corporate cronyism and all the sort of negative products of the capitalist society. However, when I take a look at it from an economic perspective, specifically with the mindset of game theory, what you see is, well, not specifically game theory. We know that when you have monopolies and duopolies and oligopolies, you see abusive practices by corporates, largely because they can. And if you follow game theory,
it doesn't have to go that far either.
But if you follow game theory, that it's very likely that there's very few actors in the industry that they will collude together and do some sort of corporate cronyism. And I believe game theory suggests the answer is to, instead of providing government regulation to curb the malintent of these bad actors is to rather instead remove government regulation to increase the number of actors so that you get the mechanisms of the free market ensuring that none of this abuse happens.
Diamond hands.
I do just think that's a fool's errand, because you're basically what you're trying to do is say humans operate on this fundamental basic level of they're going to do this thing or that thing. And there are so many motivations and so many ways that people who do not give a shit are going to game that system to turn to benefit to them.
So,
and if you take away all regulation, somebody is going to figure out how to fuck everybody else. Like, that is just how it's going to be.
Yes, if you don't have multiple actors.
You know, even if you had multiple actors, you could have. So there's actually this thought study, and they took like 1,000 people and said, okay, of all these 1,000 people you're putting in society, everybody gets $10, and everybody gets to decide how they spend that money. And at the end of it, it came down to like 2 or 3 people having all the money. You know why? Because there's something else going on there. It's not this simple equation of just being like, oh, these people make the best decisions for themselves. There's psychology involved. There's all it just goes so deep to try and pretend that it's that simple.
I think I can fix this a little bit. Game theory should not be taken as an absolute certain truth. Because it's based on math, social sciences, psychology, like human behavior. We need to always understand that there are going to be exceptions for the general rules that game theory comes up with.
Those exceptions do throw a wrench in the system.
Yeah, the point of game theory is to give you a good general idea, just like clinical psychology, of the human condition in a mathematical sense. And actually applying math to what's going on. That's what the theory is. So do you agree with that deniability?
Yes, to a degree. It provides a probabilistic statement, but even though I'll admit that it's probabilistic, using Occam's razor, it just fits. We see with OPEC. OPEC has 8 actors. Every time OPEC tries to fix the oil price, someone in OPEC cheats and the oil price crashes.
Sure.
And if they had 4 actors, I'm pretty sure they could do it effectively. But because they have 8, the price collusion keeps collapsing.
But that's the thing. But that's the thing. You'd also have to look at. So say there are 1,000 actors, and then those 8 actors that right now are fighting against each other realize they have the power. You know what they're going to do is they're going to band together. So just like you said, if it went down, it would go to 4 actors. Just like if it goes up, it's just going to go to like more people doing the same thing. So without
instead of saying they will,
way to stop it.
Sorry. I have a bit of a delay today. Sorry. Instead of saying they will, I would say they can.
Yeah.
It can't, because we're talking in absolutist terms on either side. I
would argue that
exactly.
Even though they can band together, that would only be in their immediate self-interest, but it wouldn't be in their self-interest in the long term.
Maybe it depends, but here's where the human condition comes in. Depending on what the life circumstance of that entity is, that does weigh into this equation. And that's why it's a general rule, and it's not like and it is a good measuring stick. It is a good litmus test.
We also do have to remember, like, these groups have probably a paid they have a group of professionals working underneath them that are paid a shitload of money to give the best information they probably can, so
to find advantages, right?
Exactly. So they've got this entire organization underneath them, and no matter which way it goes, those people are probably going to notice these things and be like, okay, this is what we need to do to benefit us. And if you're
So
talking about like getting
Well, aren't
rid
we
of any
seeing
regulation,
refutation of
like
that
I think
mentality
more
right now?
regulation to break that kind of behavior up would be what would benefit everybody, because
Are we
that's
seeing the exact opposite of that right now, though?
Yeah.
Like you're claiming that, like hedge funds, they have these massive organizations that have all this information and all this crap. We see what a mass of people can do when they have.
Yeah,
Some of
desired.
the-
Oh, yeah,
Desired.
to-
That's
to
what
put
Scott.
those-
That's what Scott is saying.
yeah.
Scott
Right.
is saying that trying to apply game theory in an absolute way, you have to make. And here's an easy
What
way
do you
to
mean?
look at
Game
it.
theory claims that what is happening with GameStop will happen.
But that's the thing.
No,
like,
it doesn't say
Desired,
it
even
will
with
happen.
Games-
It says it can happen.
Yeah. Well, even with GameStop Desire, do you know
It's
how many
highly likely
people,
to.
do you know how many people with very little money are going to get into that and lose their fucking ass?
Yeah.
It's
Why?
fucking atrocious, dude.
What do you mean?
Because
Desired. Based on the.
it's a mod pump and dump kind of
It is.
model, and it's
Have you
so
watched
basically
all of it?
Oh yeah, I have, and I've paid attention to stock markets before this has happened, and go back and look at Steve Madden and see like how that shit worked. Like this is a classic notion of like they're hyping people up to like say, hey, well, let's buy this
It's a
stock,
Tinder
let's
quickie.
do this. And it's like so basically back in the 80s and 90s, people had to do it by calling people on the phone and selling them stock. Now people are doing it online
On Reddit.
through Reddit. But I guarantee you there's a handful of guys who are on the top of that fucking food chain in Reddit on Wall Street bets that are the ones like, hey man, let's push everybody to buy this and we're gonna fucking sell out of
What are
the
you
top
talking
and we're gonna
about?
make
Are you
millions
saying
of
that there's
fucking
people that are
dollars.
orchestrating this and like it's a cult and they're ordering people to do things and people aren't
No,
doing it
they're,
of their own
they're
free will?
selling. They're
That's-
selling.
No, yeah,
So
they're-
how is
they're
that not-
selling, yeah.
What do you mean?
So-
How is that
the
any
seller.
different than the TV channel MSNBC?
It's the
hold
same.
on. Let's take a step
Exactly.
back.
People are being confused to think that it's some kind of virtuous, cool thing. That's the selling feature.
Oh,
What do you mean?
Hold on. We're conflating two things here, right? There's no 10 people, no 20 people, no 30 people that could distort the market that way. What's happening is
The market.
Hold on, man. Like,
Yeah,
hold
that's
on,
not
dude.
true.
Like, this is
people,
this is classically known, dude. In the 80s, this was done all the time by a group of
Scott,
20
hold on.
dudes in a
Let me
fucking
finish.
like.
let me finish. I'm getting to that. What
Okay.
people are doing is they are abusing known mechanisms for mass hysteria, and
Yes.
that's the best you can approximate. That is like there's a great case of African Bank in South Africa, where I think they were like 80 or 90 rand a share, and the key hedge fund that was holding most of the majority shareholding was only like 5%. They decided to dump African Bank because they saw trouble coming. By the time they were
But that's
done
not what's
selling,
happening.
African Bank was at 76 rand a share. But what happened was because Coronation Fund, I'm using this as a specific example of a
Yeah.
non-malice from an actor, right? So this hedge fund dumped 5%. They dropped the share price from like 85 rand to 75 rand a share. The rest of the market, the other 95% went, oh shit, Coronation Fund is dumping African Bank. We got to dump it too. And it triggered this mass hysteria.
Yeah,
That
that's,
wasn't
I mean,
That's not what's happening.
that-
What
that's
are
a-
you
that's a
thinking is
different-
happening with GameStop?
No. Hold on. I'm getting there. What I'm saying is we know this to be a mechanism that you can spook the market. And what's
Yeah,
happening with
yes,
GameStop
absolutely.
is people have colluded to specifically spook the markets.
Yes.
No, that is not what has
Well,
happened.
what's-
There's a very
it wasn't- yeah.
particular thing that's
It
happening.
wasn't a spook
because
market.
the hedge
trying to
funds
fuck
played it
hedge
poorly.
funds.
There's
It's-
a very
no, well-
there's a very specific mechanism that is being put in place here.
No,
This
no,
isn't like
well,
a crowd
desired.
decided to do
Desired.
anything.
Calm down.
Hold
Chill
on,
yourself.
dude.
Okay.
Desired, because like Like, you
No, I
have
get
to
it.
understand, GameStop stock is like fucking having Blockbuster stock. It
No,
is fucking useless. That company is going under. Like, people buy video games, people buy
you understand,
systems.
dude.
I
Because of this,
haven't
they
gone
just
to a
signed a
GameStop.
multi-year deal with Microsoft, right?
Well, it doesn't fucking
They've
matter,
generated
dude. Like,
business just over the last week.
I know, but because they've got this money pumping in, and they're
Yeah, why
using
was
it
that
as
happening?
leverage.
Why
So,
couldn't
but
they do that
doesn't-
before?
That doesn't matter. That's like,
Why
that would
couldn't
be
they
like
do
if
that
somebody
before?
hold on, dude, just fucking hold on, man. That'd be like if somebody like injected a shitload of money into fucking Blockbuster right before it was going out of business, and they reached out other places. It doesn't fucking matter.
It's
You know what their business was having brick and mortar locations to rent movies and video games. Now, what is GameStop? It's a brick and mortar location to fucking sell used video games. They're making zero fucking money, dude. Like, they are going out of business.
You know,
Like,
they just announced that they're
just-
pivoting to try to be like Steam in an online marketplace, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure
they're
they're
gonna-
gonna try
they're gonna
everything
try
to
to.
survive.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah,
that's
and
just
now
the
they've got a
mark
lot of capital to
that's
do
the
that.
mark
That's
that-
the market pushing.
desired.
They
That is the
can,
mark
but, you
of
know,
a company that finds themselves dying, but all of a sudden the dying company all of a sudden gets this influx of cash, and they say, how do we get out of this dying product? How do we get out of this dying model?
So
But that
why do you think
stock is not
GameStop
gonna-
was
that
chosen?
stock is not going to hold up for some company.
Nobody
that's
thinks it's
doing
going
a
to hold up for
complete
anything
pivot.
past a week.
Well, exactly. So
Nobody
that's
thinks
the
it is.
point.
Not a single person thinks it is.
Well, you have the Holder gang, all those guys.
Right,
been
I'm a
like,
part of it,
"Hold,
and we're holding it until
hold,
Tuesday.
Hold.
Right, because the short ran out on Friday, and
well,
they
I
had
know,
to, and it came to roost, and it was to put pressure on the short sellers. It was a
Dude,
very
well, I'm
particular
telling
tactic
you,
that
I
hedge
know- I
funds
know.
use constantly
I know.
against each other.
I know you're
And
you're reading all this shit right now, and if I can, like, man, I can fucking do something. I'm telling you.
No, but what you don't understand
If you follow,
is that this
if
is
you
a proof
follow
of
this
concept
line,
for
you're
other
getting
stocks.
Just wait.
fucked.
Scott, go ahead, and then Desired. I just want to make
I'm
sure you
just
guys
telling
get
you,
enough time.
if you're following this line, you're getting fucked. Like, what you see going on right now and what you think is happening in social media is not what's really fucking happening. The people will throw money at this, but you know what? The guys that have $10 billion fucking dollars, and even more people, even a bigger group, they got 1,000 fucking guys thinking of how to game this system best. They're gonna get your goose.
Yes, and Wall Street
like,
Bets
that's
now
all I'm
has
saying.
6 million.
Like, I'm telling you,
you're trying to talk about a mass gang when a lot of those people that you're talking about being brought into that system are also going to be on Wall Street Bets. Like, where do you think they spend their time?
It's different because, like,
how is it different? It's the same people.
I guess I should, like, differentiate the idea of investing versus speculating. Because everything that's going on with GameStop right now is speculation.
Yeah, this is Wall Street speculation, and I think it's there's not enough morality in the at play here, because people think like, oh, we're taking billions out of the big guy. Yeah, you know what? Those billions that you feel so virtuous of stealing out of the big guy's pocket, it is, and this is how economy works, it is in some way going to affect the little guy. You fucking wait.
Yes, it's going to give them more, because in the hedge
not.
fund's pockets, it's locked up. It's not being invested. It's not being spread around the economy. It's being spread around the stock market. It's not hitting the actual economy. It's being locked up in its own little closed system. Now it's being pulled out and put out into the main economy where it can be spent.
No, it's not. That's not what's happening.
Okay. And decide let's take a step back here. When people eventually sell GameStop, only the first sellers are going to make money. The rest of the people are going to lose money. When people lose in the stock market, it's more often not the people that don't know what they're doing, and the big guys are not more often than not the people that don't know what they're doing. The people that do know what they're doing are often the first people to exit, and everyone else in line that's exiting is getting fucked.
So
yeah.
You realize that it got to this point with people that were already investors. Like they were already into this and they were already doing it. You're not going to see the people that are just getting into it until next week. Because Robinhood and Webull and all of those have a 3-day window. So all mom and pop that heard about it on CNN that are signed up Thursday and Friday aren't even going to be capable to do what you're talking about until Monday.
No, Desire.
We haven't even seen that wave yet.
Well, even with buying stock, so you can say you own stock for 1 year, and then all this started happening, and you bought new stock. You're a new investor. You're buying that stock at a new price. That's what deniability is saying. It's like when you buy a stock at a certain day, you're a new investor. You're taking on that stock at that specific price at that time.
And all those that came in last week were people that were investor savvy for the most part. They were paying attention and they saw what was happening.
Yeah. So Desire, there's something important that, and maybe let's bring it back to game theory here. Sure. You're sitting part of a group of people that is trying to collude together to decide when to buy and when to sell.
No.
And game theory, what you said you're a holder, right? Did I get that
I mean,
wrong?
I'm holding because that's what a lot of what most people seem to be saying they're doing.
Holy shit!
Are you
right?
So you're attempting to work with a group
read the
of
market.
People.
Yep.
I'm attempting to read the market.
If you hold, you'll lose more money. You should tap out now.
Yeah, you should really tap out now and fuck those over who you're holding with. This is the whole premise of Wall Street speculation, dude. You're actually supposed to fuck over those guys you said you were going to hold with.
That's exactly deniability's point that he's getting to about game theory. I think he is talking about okay, I'm taking.
And you guys are applying that as if that this is the end game.
So if you what game theory says is if there were 4 of you that had the money sufficient to hold and buy and sell, the collusion would work. However, there's not 4 of you. There's potentially thousands of you trying to do this, and that means the incentive for at least one person to cheat is 100%. So
it changes the game.
Yeah, game theory says that this pursuit that you're trying to do is bound to fail, and it sounds because you're going on what other people are doing, that you're going to be the person who's going to end up failing here because you're waiting for other people to move. But game theory says that you should be the first mover. You should cheat first and get out.
When I will say desirability or desired. I had a friend a couple years ago got caught up in this same kind of thing, lost fucking $10,000. And if you're up right now, fucking take that money and fucking look at doing steady investments.
And I would like to throw in throw in something as well. Return. I can tell you about seriously about, and I'm not going to say who, but about 25 really wealthy people telling me to buy X and especially with this movement right now. But my response was exactly what deniability said, is that and I responded to them with, if I did do it, I would, because it is Wall Street speculation, I would be doing it and I would be your enemy in that game. I'm not going in as your partner. I'm going in as versus you, Street Fighter, Trav versus you. And I'm going to try and maximize because that's what that game is. And this is why I don't do Wall Street speculation, because I find it immoral.
Fire with fire, right?
So
I'm telling you, man.
Game theory is leading to that it would self-regulate like this.
We'll find a good 3.
You're looking at playing the stock as game theory happening. What I'm saying is the fact that GameStop is happening is the game theory playing out. I'm looking on a bigger scale than what you're talking about. I thought the conversation was capitalism in general, and I'm saying the game theory applied to the event of capitalism says that this event will happen to self-regulate what was going on.
But I would say so.
And
hold on
it
to
will
that
conclude.
too. Well,
So
if you ever do anything in hold on, if you ever do anything in capitalism where somebody's going to tell you you're going to get 1,500% return, fuck you. You know they're full of shit. Like Mob won't even go that far. Mob will be like, we'll give you 50%. A reasonable percent, like you have to understand, like if somebody's offering more than 10% on your return, you have to realize they're probably fucking full of shit.
No, I've heard this speech before in about 2012 when I was telling my dad about Bitcoin.
Although you have to understand, cryptocurrency was actually a huge innovation for the world, right? It's different than what's going on
and so
here.
is correcting how the stock market is made so that it's fairly traded.
That's
isn't held by the floor.
That's not a new that's not a new innovation. It's an
actual democratized stock market with less regulation isn't a new innovation. Where have you ever seen a more free market than America's?
It's an illusion.
And how it's driven it around?
It's an illusion.
So there's been a more open market than what we have.
The illusion is the sales pitch desired.
So
my dad said that too. He was a
salesman. The only thing like
sorry.
offers is.
Let's let deniability get back in here.
Who's talking? Who's got that mic in the background? Villain.
I think it's Villain.
Maybe. Oh, sorry. I'll mute myself. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no worries.
So, Desired, what you're getting to is the free market, right? And it's important to look at examples where you have a true free market to understand why you don't have a true free market in America. So, the easy example that never really comes up on anyone's radar is the labor market. Yes, there's government regulation in the labor market, but for the most part, when it comes to the competition side, there's free market competition. So in this game, there are 6 or more actors for every single job out there. So naturally, the person that gets the job is going to do the job at the highest quality for the lowest price. Because there's so many actors in the marketplace. So Scott, you were talking about a 1,000-player game. The labor market's a 1,000-player game. You're competing with everyone else that can do your job, and the onus is on you to do a higher quality job at the best possible price.
See, that's not true though. I mean, just look at the idea of a Lamborghini. They're not looking to have the lowest possible price. They're looking for this specific market of people who have money. So that's employees. That's sort of my point.
He's talking about the employee.
No. He's talking about the whole. You're talking about the whole marketplace of making a product and selling a product, and you want to make
no matter what you're doing.
And that's not the case because
that's
fashion
the niche
brands,
product.
all these different companies, and that's what they shoot for. Like somebody making a 150-foot yacht, they're not worried about selling it to the masses. They're making 5 of those a year to sell them to rich people. So
Scott, you bring up a very interesting point. How many yacht makers are there in the world?
Probably like 10.
Not
for
many.
The luxury yacht markets, there's not 10. There's 3 for the luxury yacht market.
That can't be much. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be pretty low.
So if you follow game theory, right, what it basically says is if you have an industry with 6 or more actors, the best possible quality at the lowest possible price. But when you're talking about wealth categories like Lamborghinis, you got to talk about in market competition. So who's Lamborghini competing with? They're competing with Porsche. They're competing with Ferrari. That's 3 actors. Obviously, the price of the good is going to be higher than what it takes to produce that good, because they're in an oligopoly system. These are the types of abuses I'm talking about. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you can even point to like high-end restaurants in the same thing, because a high-end restaurant's gonna filter down to way more people.
Yeah. So for the purpose of our conversation, an abuse is simply charging more than it costs to make your product and reimburse all your employees, including your CEO, so that they can at least live, right? So if you're charging a price higher than your break even, that's an abuse.
I don't think so. Like, how could that be? Because if that was the case,
because you're taking
like
away
in
from
a
society.
Business, no. Hold on. In a business, if you could only like pay for everything that's exactly going on right there, you would never be able to expand. So you need to be able to take in like certainly another
because that goes into the budget.
25 to 30% on top of that.
No, because
like,
that would be a
just
part of the budget. That would be in your budget of savings, of additions to savings would be in the budget. So that would be, you would add one more CEO salary. Right. That's what it is, because then you pay cash. Because then you pay cash for that add-in.
Scott, design's correct.
I'm telling you what game theory says, which is what deniability is trying to describe.
I'm telling you what it's like to actually like manage a fucking business. Like if you have to put money back into it, like you're not going to. You're not going to.
Yeah. Sorry,
I think you're missing the point. Is we're talking about profit.
Deniability is trying to get in here. What were you saying there?
So Scott, Design's right. You need to budget for reinvestments. I did a lot of consulting in the townships in South Africa because Coca-Cola ran a sort of affirmative action program where they'd pay very low wages to the drivers, but after 5 years they would give the truck to the driver, and they'd do an outsourced contract to earn affirmative action points.
Yes. Yep.
That's really cool.
What happened was these drivers had no business education. So as soon as they got these deals, because they had been paid nothing doing work for Coca-Cola for 5 years, they're like, no, we don't want to work for Coca-Cola anymore. We're going to start our own businesses. So there was
but they didn't pay nothing.
Yeah, but there was this explosion of removal companies.
I mean,
they were just like moving shit from place to place. And what they were doing with the pricing model is they're going, okay, to drive my truck from point A to B to C and then back home again, it's going to cost 700 Rand petrol. I'm going to have to hire two laborers for the day to load the truck, so it's 300 Rand. And then I need 300 Rand for my food for the day. So 1,300 Rand is how much I'm going to charge you for this removal. And I had to do a lot of consulting to those businesses to show them their pricing model was wrong. That they had to put away money for insurance. They had to put away money to replace their truck in the next 5 years. They had to put away money for maintenance. And when we recalculated it, and I put everything that they needed to run their business in properly, that same 1,300 Rand price was suddenly like 3,600 Rand. And suddenly they realized the other removal companies that had been in the market for much longer, they're offering for like 3,200 for that same deal. They were struggling to compete with that. And many of them decided, no, they'd be better off selling the truck and moving on to something else. So your pricing matters. And a good business will price for market downturns. They'll price for replacements of assets and machinery. They'll price for all foreseeable expenses. And I'm saying, if you're pricing correctly, then once you factor in all that keeps your business operating and sustainable and continuing into the future and growing, right? Once you factor all that into your pricing, if you're charging anything above that, you are now abusing the markets. Now, that's, of course, what businesses want to do. So the question is, how do we abuse the markets? Because if you are producing iron rods and there's 100 other iron rod producers and you're making the exact same products, and you're down to the lowest price you can pay before you go out of business, then how do you compete with market share? Well, obviously you want to charge more, but you can't charge more for your product, so you got to innovate. So instead of just doing an iron rod, now you do a steel rod. Now you're the only person offering a steel rod. Now you can charge whatever the fuck you want until other people enter and start offering steel rods, and then you're forced to lower your price of the market, lower your price to retain market share until we're back to the same scenario of everyone offering the best quality at the lowest price, and then wait.
And now everyone can build their own steel rods.
Yeah, and now we innovate again, and we keep adding to that process. This is the mechanism of free market competition. This is how you get a drive down of price and an increase in quality.
Yeah.
But you only see these
I think you're explaining a perfect world, and it's like to me it sounds the same thing as like, oh, if only communism just actually worked perfectly, everything would be great. And to me that's a fundamental break in, because we all know, like, everything that you're explaining right now sounds perfectly normal, perfectly reasonable, but we know that's not what takes place.
Scott, we see these mechanisms. Look at communication, right? There's tons of active communication.
But this is the same thing that communists say.
That's not the same thing, because communism doesn't even work in theory.
Yeah. We are talking about virtually for free because of free market competition in the communication space. The reason you and I are privileged to have this conversation is because of the mechanisms of the free market that have driven the quality of communication up and the price of
but it's also been a heavy amount of government subsidies. So if you want to talk about talking online over the internet, the United States government subsidized the creation of the internet
at which
fucking
stage,
heavily.
Which stage would you say it stopped being heavily government and started being heavily privatized?
We still subsidize. We still do government subsidies for internet. But
government controlled entities provide a lot of like free Wi-Fi service and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, like early in the creation of it, it was all government money that said, "Hey, this is a good idea that you scientists had. Let's throw some money at it and see if we can make it work." So
you do know you should be very careful when you say the government is giving away something free, because it's not. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't mind my taxes are going to something the government is giving everyone, because it's good. If it helps everyone, that's good.
That's what I paid my taxes for, is to get that back. The government didn't pay for it. I did. You did. We did.
We all did.
That's a good thing. We as a collective conscience decided the internet's a good idea, and the government allowed that to happen. That's what government is.
No, it was like 5 guys from MIT who had this idea of like, hey man, we could do this thing.
Yeah.
And then they convinced some politicians to go along with it. It wasn't like everybody was like, hey, we can just have internet.
It's a mix of both. Individuals do it, and then we put taxes into it.
Hold on, what's that? Deniability?
Scott, you're half right. You can create government investments solely to governments through DARPA, which invented the internet. But the internet as a concept, once invented, required massive capital investment to realize the internet that we have today.
To get to where it is now,
that capital investment wasn't done by government. That capital investment was done by the private sector.
Yeah, correct. But there was like with certain things like Google. There was a lot of government subsidies behind it.
That's like saying you're only the person you are because of your mother, because she birthed you, when there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's happened since then.
That's not what I'm saying.
So, but you're not going to make any reasonable case that the government subsidizes the internet to any effective cause. While Google might receive incentives by way of tax breaks, I doubt they receive a subsidy. And even if they did receive a subsidy, their business model is profitable with or without it.
So there's something interesting about game theory, and this is why I bring up Canadian healthcare. Government ran. We do have some privatized options, but I think in Canada, the moral implications of healthcare and what should be available, I think the morality, the moral code is sorted out enough to overcome the capitalistic urge within that market, at least. And
so do you believe in a benevolent dictator then?
Sorry?
Do you believe in a benevolent dictator?
It has nothing.
No, it has nothing to do with that. What I believe is a collective, is a society. You know how we come up with laws in democracy. We lobby, we change, we adapt, we write, we vote. And that is what Canada has done with our healthcare system. That is how it was developed.
So this is how it comes in, right? We figured out a while ago that if one person stays in power for any prolonged period of time, they eventually turn towards corruption at such a high probability that it's virtually guaranteed. So we figured, despite the benefits of having a long-term leader, because the argument can be made the best policies are policies that are implemented with a 10 or 20-year view, not a 5-year view, as is what you get with democracies when you change your president every 5 years. But even though that case can be made, the benefits of those long-term policies do not outweigh the cost of the corruption of your leadership, your political leadership structure. So we figured, you know what, let's soften them out.
Red tape deniability takes care of a lot of what you're talking about. So if you look at the United States, when there's a transition of power, there is a lot of red tape and balance and checks, and that's what makes the West great.
The whole point of having laws, institutions, constitutions is you want to control the power. Power is great, but you need to restrain it just enough. You don't want to completely restrain it so it can be useless, but you want to restrain it just enough so it doesn't go crazy and hurt certain things.
Yes.
So
I'm not in disagreement here. I'm glad we all agree that this is the case, and this is why we have democracy. We change our leaders every 5 years to prevent the negative externality of a corrupt political leadership hierarchy. Now, that seems to have worked pretty well in the political landscape. It's not ideal, but it's certainly better than a dictatorship. Now, when it comes to capitalist markets, you see that same negative externality within a monopoly. When a single player controls the entire market, you see horrid abuses.
Sure.
On the same level as a political dictatorship.
In general.
So but there's a problem.
Canada's overcome it, though.
So in the private markets, you have people that own stuff. And if you want to respect property ownership, you can't just take their shit away from them and say, you've had it for 5 years now, we're going to give it to someone else.
Of course.
That we just voted in. That would be catastrophic.
It would be immoral, right?
Doesn't change the fact.
Isn't it weird though that isn't exactly what Trump did for the border wall, and nobody fucking blinked an eye?
Well, I would say people blinked an eye and they were pissed about it. A lot of people, but also a lot of people supported that policy.
A lot of people in Texas. People like, these motherfuckers. That's my land.
But now we need some way to address corporate cronyism. So the solution we have in the political sphere is take your toys away and give it to someone else. We can't do that in the capital sphere. So, but we still have this problem of abuse. How do we address it? Well, that's what game theory says. It's to address that monopolistic abuse. There's no way of properly regulating it. The best way of regulating something so massive on a massive scale is just to ensure people are competing fairly. And the more actors you have in the market, the more fair the competition, the less the abuse.
So deniability, yes, and game theory works, but I'm going to bring up Canada healthcare again. Morality can overcome and actually it can overcome that from a governmental system as long as the morality is in check.
So back to my original question. Do you believe in a benevolent dictatorship? Because yes, I am shifting gears from a capital market to a political market, but the reason for that whole introduction was, do you think that even though we've identified it as a problem if you have one person controlling something, both in the private sector and the public sector, you must believe that if morality can break this trend, that on some level a benevolent dictatorship, because that's benevolent is moral.
And I'll explain it. I'll explain why.
I would even ask, what the fuck is a benevolent dictatorship? If it's a dictatorship, it's not benevolent by design.
But I also want to say deniability. I can answer that. So the same way that we have laws against raping children, right? you can actually apply that mentality. Then people try to do this with game theory, where they try to look at laws and say, well, this is just dictatorship. The system has dictated that this law is the case, and I don't think it's right. Now, you can lobby in a democracy to fight against that and say, I think we should be able to rape children, and here are my reasons why, and here's my argument. But and this is where, if the moral fabric of the society was able to be swayed and said, oh, okay, well, I think there's a strong argument here, let's sign this into legislation. But that's not the case. If we look at the reality of Canada, it's like we have all adopted this idea that we are willing to pay for the healthcare of everyone.
How exactly does Canada's healthcare system work?
So we don't even pay monthly anymore. Well, obviously, we pay through our taxes. But literally, Metalworks, if you are a Canadian citizen, you go anywhere. It can be a walk-in clinic, to your doctor, to your family doctor, to a hospital, and you just get care. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter.
There's
if it's
no
surgery.
private insurance companies.
There are for things like dentistry isn't part of, like, some dentistry is part of healthcare, but not all. Like, anything cosmetic is not considered
it's similar
healthcare.
to a single payer system.
Sorry?
Would you say it's similar to a single payer system?
Well, I mean, I'll just explain what it is, and you can tell me. Sorry, I just want to beat this guy first. Oh no, he's got me in check. Never mind.
It is a single payer system. Metal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I wouldn't have a problem with single payers. I don't want too much government control over it.
But the good thing about what Canada has done is we haven't shut down the private market. People can actually practice privately here, and people do well in business here.
Compatibilism.
Yeah.
So Pangburn, that's an interesting thing you raise, because in my experience, there's only businesses because there's a demand for it. And if there's a demand, if there are private healthcare providers in Canada, there's a demand for private healthcare providers.
So, and I'll tell you why. Sorry.
But this demand, it means not everyone's happy with the public.
No, so the people who actually use the private healthcare system, the reason why there's a few different things, but the main thing is that the difference for someone who's very wealthy, we have a lot of money in Canada, especially in Vancouver here and in Toronto, and people, like, if people have to wait 2 weeks for an MRI when they can actually go to a private MRI place and get it done that day, people who have the money to spend $800 to get that will actually go and do it because they don't want to wait.
There's nothing wrong with
MRI through normal insurance in the United States is about $2,000.
That's unfucking believable. In Canada, privately, like, to get it done day of, walk into a place, get an MRI, it's $800, and otherwise it's free.
Crazy. This is why I like the single payer system, because I want something that people can get that the current health companies have kind of a monopoly. They can kind of cooperate with each other, and that's what they kind of do now. When you have the government there that has the bare minimum,
more regulation, more problems.
Well, we already have that exact same system in the United States, because when I had to get an MRI, I already had insurance. That insurance covered this, but once I had to get an MRI, I had to pay $2,000 fucking dollars for it.
If we had a single payer system,
oh yeah. That's funny that you said that it cost $2,000 without saying that you were charged $2,000. That's what came out of your pocket.
Yeah,
more like it was probably like $14,000 or $15,000.
Yeah.
So we have to look at
but we'll only charge him too.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at what people can accomplish too, and this kind of comes down to, like, the social distance thing that we've this terrible experiment that we've tried of trying to get the social ape to social distance, and all you need to do is go to your local grocery store to see how well these social apes are good at that.
Well, is that really fair to make that assessment when no building is designed for social distancing?
But that's part of that's part of what I'm talking about, desired. But also, like, in the situations where, like in grocery stores where they literally are only letting in a quarter capacity. Like I've done a lot of filming during this pandemic, and just allowing like quarter capacity. You even see like people just like subconsciously moving through spaces, touching how many things we touch, how much we fiddle with our masks and stuff. It's a lot to ask. And then and the reason why I bring this up is because when you ask a person to make sure that they save enough buffer, like in the United States, save enough money and have that buffer to cover their medical bills if things come up. I just don't think in general that's a good system, and that people are going to be good at that. And I think that we have examples of that spew up every day in the United States, that people find themselves with huge medical debt that they're like, shit, I should have been essentially taxing myself, let's say 10-15% of my income for these dark days of when I'm going to need medicine. And in Canada, there's just a collection of those funds, and we distribute it evenly amongst all the citizens.
In the United States, there's so many areas like that people are in the exact same situation. You know,
that's family culture. Like that's traditions and values. Like my family, I come from a poor background, but we've never not had private medical healthcare. Like we would eat less food per month than not have private medical healthcare.
But deniability. I'm not saying again with these clinical psychological theories, they are general rules. I don't think what you are saying, that what you and your family did, is generally how people are able to function. Like people, let's say, who are making minimum wage, they start thinking like, if I had to, save away 10% and eat less, it's like they're like, well, I can only really eat rice every day. And then then you have to, as a country, start asking yourself, is this really what we want for our citizens? Like, or should we be micro taxing this?
Honestly, you could look at the first worker laws put into place in the United States, and how much did that change what the United States was? All of a sudden, people went from working crazy, fucked up jobs to the American ideal of the middle class. And that was based off of government regulation. That's
Can you define that a little more, Scott?
It really was. I mean, like if you look at tax, the highest tax rate in the 1950s was like 90%. Yeah. And people will say
almost like it was a communist state or something.
To get out of it, there are ways to get out of it. Yeah, there were, but they were still paying more than what they're paying now.
Yeah.
And things were okay. When it's.
How about when King George was taxing with no representation? Big fucking swell.
Yeah, but that's a little different when it was taxed with representation. And they still weren't.
No, I'm just saying, like, then you get uprisings, right? People get fucking fed up.
So this is kind of works, Scott.
They built the national highway system. Do you know how many people that employs? Do you know how many towns that like?
Scott, that's good. So while we're on the subject, let's just quickly define where the government has a business and where it has no business. So when we're talking about private goods as defined by products or services whose benefit is divisible and excludable. So when I take a pill, it precludes you from taking that pill. Therefore, shoes, right? These are private goods. Under the private sector, in a free market, they increase in quality and decrease in price. However, with public goods, when you put them in the private market, you see that the poor end up being abused, and that can quickly lead to the whole society melting down. So
totally.
If there's not a effective plan to put out every building in the city, if the fire starts, if you just have like say 10% of the city that doesn't have fire cover and that gets on fire, the fire could get to a point where no reasonable way can be put out, and then you have the Great Fire of London. So fire service is very much a public good because there's no way to divide the benefit of a building being put out on the other side of town between you and I living in the same city. We receive the benefit. Same with the police services. When the murderer is locked up, there's no way to say you get more benefit than I do, so it's a public good. roads are a quasi-public good because everyone has the benefit until it's full, and then you can't access the benefit anymore. You can make a quasi-public good argument for vaccinations because of herd immunity. So when there's no way to clearly divide the benefit, the government has very much a business jumping in there, regulating it. So justice systems, military, fire, police, roads, these are all things that are public or quasi-public goods. And even though the government is inefficient at doing it, it's better than when the private sector does it. And when I say inefficient, for every dollar the American taxpayer spends on police services, they spend another $3 monitoring said police services. So it's about 25% efficient. When you have private security, it's 100% efficient, but then there are negative externalities related to that. So the government has a business in public goods. However, with private goods, when you put them in government hands, it turns into a monopoly, and then you get a decrease in quality and an increase in price.
So deniability. I'd like to ask you: do you think healthcare is a public good?
Yes.
No, it's not by economic definitions. And
I think that's a mistake. I think it's a moral error.
I think that how is it not by economic definitions?
Well, you can even do like what Canada does, where it's not in the government's hands. Well, hold on. Like the way Canada works, it's not in the government's hand. The government doesn't say this is what people get. It's in the doctor's hands. It just lays out that people.
And there's still a private market,
and that's the difference. It's not like governments making these decisions. Just saying, hey, okay, here's
no. Okay. The scientific consensus drives the practice, and you know the government. We have just said as a people that and this is the moral difference between the United States and Canada. In the United States, you hear all of these people scream and yell, especially particularly on the right, that why should I have to pay for another person's health care? That attitude doesn't exist in the United States. We say in Canada, we are happy to pay for other people's health care as long as we know that they're getting health care. That's the fundamental difference.
So here's the thing. Wait a second. I'll
Metal, before we continue,
Okay.
I just need to correct something that Travis is conflating here, because you're shifting into a moral argument. When I said,
it's a big part of this.
When I said it's a public good, I'm not talking about good in the metaphysical sense. I'm talking about good as in a product or service.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. But I'm saying good as we use morality to distinguish what should be accessible to the human being from a government standpoint.
So we are in agreement that it is a metaphysical public good. Where we disagree is how we get there, right? So when you say public, let's have the best public health, you're saying let's offer the best quality treatments at the lowest price. Now, in your system, the government pays that price, so you'd say, oh, there's no price attached. But there is a price attached, because to get minerals out of the ground and convert them into machinery or medicines requires labor time, and unless you believe in slavery, someone needs to be paid.
So deniability, I'll tell you that in Canada, the rates at which people are paid, this and you know, for their services, this is a constant source of debate, especially among nursing, and how many nurses we need to have available, if the nurses are being overworked, if the doctors are being overworked, if we don't have enough emergency room surgeons. All this stuff is debated in the breath of democracy, and that's how and those are the conversations that tend to be the big topics of conversations. Whereas in the United States, the conversations are still whether or not people should be paying for others through taxes. People should be paying for others' healthcare. In Canada, we are past that. We're talking about, okay, now that we've accepted that this is what we believe, the metaphysical part. How are we going to put this into practice? What's fair? What's fair on a global market? Do doctors feel like they're making a good salary compared to what they make in the United States? All this stuff. And also, one thing I will say, healthcare should not be absent innovation. And Canada does still innovate, but we don't innovate at the level of a purely privatized healthcare system like the United States. But I think there is a way for the United States to keep up the competition, yet still offer basic healthcare to their citizens. And they got to find, and they obviously, there's money that has to be found within the budget, but I think it is a moral necessity for a country to do that.
And I can answer that question. It cannot be.
Money is already there.
It cannot be.
States spends a shit of money for.
Poland, Scott, this metal guy's been trying to get in for a while.
Yeah.
Sorry, metal.
I'm trying to get in here. So the problem with healthcare in general is that it's not like the other kinds of goods and services that we have. Like, because in America, if I wanted cheap food, I can get cheap food. If I want to make my own food, I can start a garden in my yard. I can DIY about any essential needs. Do I need a bike? Do I need transportation? I can use a bike. I can use a bus. There's ways to get free water. But to DIY health, that is very difficult. So the problem with healthcare, it is essential. It is a market that will always.
You can DIY cancer treatments.
You cannot DIY cancer treatments.
Well, no.
Even if you try to be as healthy as possible, you're still going to need a doctor. You're still going to need to. You can't just diagnose yourself. It's actually a bad thing to do. They recommend you not do that. Yes. So the fact that it is a guaranteed need, there's going to always be a market for healthcare. That means that they are always going to have a customer. Now the problem here is that we don't want to overregulate it and slow down the innovation cycle. I completely understand why deniability doesn't want government to be too hands-on with it. But the problem we have is that if we keep ignoring these people that are dispossessed by the healthcare system, a person recently, I heard in my neighborhood, they had to get cancer treatment, and if they didn't do it, they were going to die. And when they took the cancer treatment, they had to sell their house. They lost their house. Yeah. And they're in their old age. They're retired. Yeah. Now, that should not happen. But that doesn't mean we need to completely have healthcare run by the government.
Yeah, but Metal, we don't have it completely. Just wait, guys. We don't have it completely. We have a private market.
No, I'm just one.
How does game theory claim that privatized is bad?
I just wanted to skip to my point.
Or privatized is good.
This is why we want a single payer system. The government provided healthcare will be at the bottom of the barrel, basic necessities, and then you'll have private institutions that are a little bit better than it that people will want to get. But at least they have something at the basic to fall back on. That's what we need. We don't want to completely eliminate the private market, but we also don't want to have people fumbling with absolutely nothing.
I just think there's a bit of confusion here because a lot of the kind of research is actually being done through like pharmaceutical companies, which is separate from what you'd quote unquote call the healthcare system. Yeah. So if you look at just the healthcare system in the United States, what we could do is instead of having a middleman, instead of having an insurance company that makes that payment for us with a comptroller that has no face, no name, nobody we ever know, they could make that decision whether we get this treatment or not.
I don't think we need to do that. I think by just having government, they will have to compete with the government. And since the government's basic shit, the healthcare companies are going to have to realize we can't just fuck people over anymore.
Let Scott finish, Metal. I don't think Scott was done.
Sorry.
That's what we already have. And we could go to a system where we could just say, okay, let's let these healthcare providers. Here's this. Everybody in the country will pay a certain amount on their taxes, and I would bet that amount would be less than what you'd pay percentage wise on your paycheck for your healthcare in the United States. So right off the bat, people would be saving money on not paying healthcare through their paycheck and just paying that lesser amount of tax. And then healthcare providers could do what they wanted to do. But then I also wanted to get to the point of the idea of research and stuff. So with pharmaceutical companies, what happens right now is the United States is heavily subsidizing pharmaceutical companies through research, through colleges. So a lot of people who get get degrees in biology and who are looking for cures and stuff. It is heavily subsidized by the U.S. government. What happens is after we've subsidized all that, we just give that information to pharmaceutical companies for free. And they turn around and say, okay, well, we're going to make these couple little tweaks and we're going to charge you fucking $9,000 a month for this. Yes. So there is this thing where we're already in a situation where we are subsidizing the creation of these things that we need, but then we give it to companies who are just fucking us in the ass, and it doesn't make any sense.
So Scott, this is where I want to come in here, and like this is more to come back on Travis, because when people look at America and they say that's a good example of a free market system, no, it's a good example of a privatized monopoly and oligopoly system, and why it's bad. Because all this government regulation does is create false barriers to entry. So on the note of research, let's look at antibiotics. There are no serious efforts into discovering more antibiotics because the cost in researching it is prohibitive. Why is the cost in researching it prohibitive? Because all the regulations and all the testing have to be FDA, right? You remove that and suddenly it's viable to research antibiotics. No antibiotic research is being done because of the regulatory burden, right? So what the solution that they've come up with is the government says, okay, well, if you subsidize, we'll subsidize you. It will subsidize you by doing the research through the universities and then giving you that information to go patent and go make a fuckload of money. But therein lies the problem. Patents, right? Never in the history of humankind has something amazing been invented to register a patent. All of our amazing inventions have been invented by people who wanted to do it because they saw a problem that they wanted to fix.
Yeah.
That's the true market innovation. There are no out there that look purely to patent their technology, right? The whole patent system is a government regulation we can do without. The reason it costs so much for insulin in the United States of America is because of the patent laws. Because one person owns the patent for insulin in the United States of America, and he price gouges and charges monopoly abuses. The solution is to
actually do.
Take away patents, take away the regulation, and then the only cost of producing insulin is me buying a factory, buying the machines, and buying the raw product. And then, bam, we got insulin at $10 a vial because it's super cheap to make.
Just a little bit
in America, you can do that. So in America, you can buy insulin in a jar, in a syringe, but it's really hard to judge how much you're actually getting. So basically what's happened, because I followed this case that you're talking about very closely. The company that holds the patent on that, what they do is about every 10 years is they change a couple things in the delivery system, and that's what they patent, and that's how they charge more and more every year. Is because they say,
it takes longer to
like modulations in the delivery system. But you can buy, like, if you wanted to, you could just buy a vial and a fucking syringe and just do it yourself.
Yeah. But now, Scott, the key thing here is you take away patents, right? And the only way for them to retain market share is to innovate and provide better quality than the competition at a cheaper price. That's their only protection if there's no regulation. So the American healthcare system is such a problem that if you take something like cancer, chemotherapy, right? You cannot shop around for chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is fairly standard. There's not a lot of variety in chemotherapy, right? So in theory, if Dr. X is offering chemotherapy and Dr. Y is offering chemotherapy, I should be able to go up to them and ask them, how much does it cost? They will not be able to give me an answer because...
No, they did. Trump just changed that.
Did he? That's
he signed an executive order enforcing medical institutions to show their pricing.
Yep.
So you can shop around now.
Yeah.
That is stroke of That's preventing free market mechanisms. Like you abolish insurers' right to contract out special pricing, and then once pricing is public, people have to compete with their pricing. It starts to come down. The next step.
Well, even with that, like so even with that, so you can say at this last in the chain of this specific product that I'm getting is we have this price listed right here. Do you really think it's going to be that much different between providers? I mean,
it is. It's like drastically different. They've done many different studies where people have like gone to different hospitals and like they went through months and months and months of arguing with the administrators and finding out how much it costs to have a baby at one hospital. It could be like dozens of thousands of dollars out of pocket difference.
Yeah.
That's why Trump signed that order. I have a question for Metalworks. How you said that you could buy vials of insulin and count it out yourself. What other way do you think exists?
I think Scott said
the insulin pins that are already made.
That
was Scott.
That was Scott, I think.
And I think what he was talking about is the instant inject
do you
type
not
pins
know anybody
versus
with diabetes?
I'm not aware of something called an insulin pin.
Not an insulin. No,
dude. So basically, what my dad gets is it's a pack, and it's a pack of these little pins, and it has a little rotating knob at the top that you can say, okay, I just take my blood sugar levels. I need to take 10 milligrams, and you just turn this little knob, and that goes to 10 milligrams, and you inject yourself.
I would say that that's a rare exception. It's normally a syringe and a vial. That's how.
No, my wife had gestational diabetes, and she was given those. That's standard for diabetics. Field, as far as I know.
I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of diabetics, and I've never seen somebody with a pen you're describing. It's always a vial and a syringe.
No, they're EpiPens now. Those are very common. I know someone with diabetes.
Yeah, EpiPens in Canada is what people tend to have.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to take to stores and stuff.
I have a question for you, Travis.
Yes.
With your whole morality claim, I don't want to get into like I don't believe there is morality in atheism, but that's not my point here. How do you deal with the issue of health choices? Do you ban people from, if you're going to provide healthcare, do you ban people from smoking? Do you ban people from drinking Mountain Dew until they get Mountain Dew foot and diabetes, or like how do you deal with the fact that people's health choices incur prices?
People have freedom to make any choice, and like I said, it doesn't change the moral standing of Canadians in saying even if people make bad health choices, we're still willing to pay for their health care. We think it's a fundamental.
I disagree. I don't want to pay for some obese person that eats horrible and smokes and does all that.
I mean, that's just a moral.
I shouldn't have to pay for his health care.
So that attitude doesn't exist in general in Canada, and that's not the way our country's built. And I think it's for good reason because a human.
That's all like very like virtue altruism, pat yourself on the back. What do you think about people
it's not actually. It actually results.
He had to go to America to get treatment for his cancer.
They don't actually have. No. They don't actually have to do that. But some of the most recent innovation does exist in the United States. They don't have to go to the United States, but some of the very new recent innovation. We have cancer centers all over the place in Canada treating people. It's not that you have to go down because it's too long of a wait. People with cancers get frontline treatment. It's not this myth of having to wait.
Villain was on like an 8-month waiting list, and he chose to go to the U.S. and pay out of pocket.
The 8-month waiting list is not correct. If someone's telling you that they were on an 8-month waiting list for their throat cancer to get imaging or something like that, they're full of shit. They're just full of shit.
That's Molyneux's claim.
Yeah, it's absolutely full of shit. I would love to see. I would love to investigate why he's lying, because cancer is an instant. It's an instant. You walk into a hospital, they give you every single treatment you need. Now, if it's a matter of waiting to see the results of how a treatment is rolling out within your cancer treatment,
I don't know.
Then that may be the case. But there is no 8-month waiting for a cancer patient for anything to do with their throat cancer.
Look, I don't want to get bed down in the details, but
it seems
if I could adjust William's question there, because I think he raised a very important thing that's often considered in this conversation, is if you suggest that it's a moral good for people to basically live without consequences when it comes to their personal health.
I didn't say live without consequences.
Well, no,
what do you mean?
The thing about
that's the point.
The thing about a private system is if you eat yourself to obesity, you come with a whole host of negative health effects. If you have to pay for those negative health effects, it disincentivizes you from being obese.
No.
And
no.
If you don't have to pay for it,
that's not the way. That's not the way mental health works.
What are you talking? He didn't say anything about mental health.
Yes, obesity.
He's talking about straight up just have fat, have diabetes. Nothing about how you got fat or anything like that. He's just talking about the excess cost of carrying extra weight.
He said eating yourself to death.
Right, and becoming fat and having extra strain on your bones and all of those results that cost more medically.
Let's not get into the details here. Or I can make the same example with smoking and cancer.
Sure.
I can make the same example with skydiving and risk activities, right? The point is that, in my view, when you have the possible expense of a hospital visit in mind, it provides, and you can argue based on varying on person how much of it is. There is some level of disincentive there. When you're looking at your system, where's the disincentive for me to make poor choices?
Well, deniability, the data shows that Canadians are a lot healthier than Americans. So the evidence
happen to be doesn't mean that's evidence. Correlation is not.
No,
I answer the question.
Desired, watch your attitude, man. Don't call. Sorry, don't but call out like that.
I mean, like that's
engaging.
You call
good
people
faith.
out for doing that too.
Engaging.
I am. Faith. I'm requesting good faith from you.
Yeah, and my answer was that we up in Canada. Sorry. What was the?
Where's the incentive to be healthy? Not that you are. Where's the incentive in it?
Oh, no, that's
because
silly.
Living is its own damn reward.
Is that why would you want to be unhealthy?
Yes,
not to disincentive.
You guys you're not understanding. Like human beings have a survival incentive to wish to be healthy. There's a reason why people generally err on the side of wanting to be well instead of being unwell. Is this really a mystery to all of you?
No, but that exists. That exists evenly between Canadians and Americans. So that shouldn't be on the table in a part of the question because Americans have just as much drive to be healthy as Canadians do. So with the difference being the different healthcare systems, where does the healthcare system provide the disincentives or the incentives other than the common one that we share?
Well, you could also look at marketing of unhealthy foods.
Right. There's a lot of factors, guys, when it comes to food and why people are accessing different foods and what's available. But all I'm saying is that if you're looking at, we're talking about health. We're talking about health care of the people. If you look at the healthiness of Canadians versus Americans and why Canadians are so much healthier, ask yourself why that is. And look at the different the factors that weigh into that.
That's what we asked you for.
No, but Travis, that's unfair. Like on the one hand, you say, "Oh, there's lots of reasons in America not related to the healthcare system," and then you say, "Oh, Canada is doing better, and it's because of the healthcare system." Either there's lots of reasons that.
I'm saying the healthcare system should be there to improve the health of your society, right?
Travis, I think it's unfair for you to call to morality and the benevolence, altruism of providing healthcare to a society, but then excusing people of their personal behavior as though
I didn't excuse people. You think providing healthcare for them is
I didn't get to finish my thought. I think that the way you're describing obesity is mental illness. It excuses people of their self-responsibility. Rather, I would look at it as gluttony. It's a vice and a moral character flaw.
Yeah, people
because it puts strain on the system for those who don't partake in the joy that or whatever. The benefit you gain from that puts strain on others than yourself, and that is immoral.
Just say what you guys are meaning. You don't want to pay for those people's well-being.
No, I do. I absolutely do want one-payer system for everybody to have free health.
Villain doesn't.
I just disagree for the reason you're saying.
I don't.
There's a difference between
immoral behavior. I think it's immoral to enable people in their degeneracy.
You're not enabling them by providing basic health care. You're not enabling.
I agree with that. That's true. That's not an enablement.
It's immoral to pay for somebody's diabetes medication when they got
this really isn't.
That right there. I think what the deniability was trying to make, I believe, is that the paying for the insulin. Go ahead.
The morality of this situation is irrelevant. The real question is this the responsibility of the government, or should a private charity be doing this? Because if you ask me, I think this is the role of a charity, not the government.
I don't even think that's the question. I think what's the most efficient way to pay for it, and I think the most efficient way to pay for it is if we just collected a tax that went to a giant fund that then could go out to providers to take care of.
Charity can do that.
I believe it was deniability was saying earlier. He was mentioning the fact of taxes should be only towards things that are equally benefiting everybody equally. Healthcare does not benefit everybody equally.
Pangburn said earlier that in Canada, everyone's willing to pay into the pot so that they're all willing to pay for each other's healthcare. If that's the case, then a charity should be able to pop up and say, if you want to pay for other people's healthcare, then you can sign up to our charity where everyone donates.
It already exists.
If everybody's truly willing to do it, there's no need for government force.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The government doesn't need to force people who don't want to be involved in that to be involved in that.
Yeah, if you do that, then you'll end up with the healthcare system that you have in the United States, and it sucks. Your system sucks.
Well, here's another thing that universal healthcare disincentivizes. It disincentivizes the risk-taking of young men, because if I'm a healthy young man and I want to risk and put all my capital and all my resources into creating a business or providing a home or whatever I want to put it into, and I want to risk the chance that I come to some catastrophe. Yeah, thank you. It disincentivizes the young men to risk.
We don't have that problem.
Risk taking.
We just don't have that problem.
Yeah, Bill, and I'd say the exact opposite is true.
Yeah,
as a young man who wants to start a business, I don't have a way of doing that if I can't take care of myself if I get hurt, specifically because I want to be in a manual labor job.
Well, I want to take the risk. I choose differently. I want to take the risk and spend all my money the way I want to spend it, and I'll deal with my own health situation.
So real quick, just so we understand, deniability. Are you for or against Canadian-style healthcare?
Against.
How can
Villain,
that
are you
possibly
for
be?
or against? Hold on, Villain, are you for or against?
I don't really completely know that I understand Canadian healthcare, but I'm
the one-payer type system.
I'm against universal healthcare.
Like not necessarily, but that type of thing. And
I think it
everybody else is talking is
personal responsibility.
Or for it, right?
But here's the next question, Desire. Am I for or against the American healthcare system? And the answer is no.
Okay. No, that's fair. I was getting a little confused with the statements were being made on who's standing for what principle. Because it seems as though if you're for freedom, you would be more for the villains and deniability side. And if you're more moral, like, to me,
not moral,
morally of the individual,
security.
There's nothing antithetical
over freedom.
There's nothing antithetical to freedom.
There's a miss right here.
So desired. Here's the nuance in my claim. Right?
I don't think it's moral to force people to pay for things that they're not benefiting.
There we go. Thank you, Mace. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, because you don't see benefit in those around you in their health.
Hold on.
I have something to say.
Okay, sorry, scratch that. I don't think it's moral to force people to pay for things that they don't want to buy. If you don't want to buy it, then I can't force you to buy it.
Okay, so roads. If you don't want to buy roads because you don't drive, if you don't want to buy,
if you don't have
policing,
a car, then you shouldn't have to pay road tax.
Okay, I don't want to live in your country, dude.
Hold on. There's a perfectly good.
That doesn't
argument.
mean you can't. That doesn't mean. That just means he doesn't want to be forced. He probably would gladly. But it's the forced to.
You're
it's
leaving too much
Edward
up to
thing.
the social ape.
Take a step back.
We're getting there, though. Like that's what I'm saying is we're just apes. Like we don't understand. We're learning. Go ahead.
Wait here, Mace. The argument for roads is a public good argument, and even if you don't own a car, you still benefit from the roads.
Right, with the food that gets to your house on the road.
Every single parcel of land in any democratized capitalist economy must be linked to a road, be it public or be it private. And to the extent that you cannot buy 10 square meters of land in the middle of my land without that 10 square meters of land connecting to a road through a private or public road, it's illegal. And even if you don't own a car, you benefit from the road system just by mere fact that you don't grow your own food, you don't do a whole bunch of things on your property by yourself to live. You need exchange with the outside world, and that exchange is made cheaper by the fact that there are roads. So it's a benefit to everyone, regardless if you drive a car or not. But Desire, there's a little nuance in my argument because I'm not quite the whole hog personal responsibility that villain's going off on. Pangburn and I share the same moral claim. I believe that we should have the best healthcare for the most people possible. And I don't think there's an easy way of achieving that through a socialized healthcare system. I think the faster way to achieve that is to deregulate the industry, increase the number of actors, and get true free market conditions to the point where those mechanisms of increasing quality and decreasing price happen. Because I look at things like food, the labor market, communications. These are industries that operate in free markets where even though there is some regulation, there's ineffective regulation. So people try to regulate the internet, but you just move your domicile from America to Zanzibar, and suddenly you can continue doing what you're doing, and there's no way that the American government can enforce or regulate it. So the internet is a free market, and everything that's provided on the internet, it increases in quality and decreases in price. Everywhere we see anything that approximates a free market, we see this mechanism of increasing quality and decreasing price. And I think that if we made a real effort and pushed to deregulate the medical sector, increase the number of actors, that the mechanisms of free market competition will decrease the price that good is offered to the lowest possible price, sustainable price possible. And that price will be lower than a government socialized healthcare system. It's not to say that the government socialized, I mean, for sure, let's say Travis is right. Canada provides the best healthcare, but it's not at the best price. And it's not the most ideal outcome, I would say.
So what you're trying to point out more is look more at the prices. You're saying that most people in this conversation don't see the full scope of costs when it comes to a thing like Canada's.
I said this about an hour ago, I think, or a half hour ago. That is what's debated and fought for at the legislative level. This when we're having our debates on the current state of the healthcare system. Those are the details we're wrestling with. It's whether the wages of our nurses and our doctors are up to snuff, if they're happy with it. And they will make strong arguments as, well, I can go work in this country or that country or wherever and receive this, and how come we can only make this here? That's all part of the discussion, and it's all taken into consideration, and the government is always fighting we are always hovering that line of like, okay, the healthcare system needs more resources, so let's put a bit more money in. We need more in the budget for healthcare.
That is less effective than the private market doing it, because let's look at why something costs something, right? Everything is in free abundance, just located on the earth, right? To get it gold from outside the deep trenches of the earth.
I think
you need a mining operation. You need to create the machinery. To create the machinery, that's labor time. There's labor time in processing the ore. There's labor time in turning it into a manufactured product. There's labor time in using that manufactured product. 95% of the price and cost of literally anything is labor time when you work it back to its origination.
Can I?
So when you say that you have these mechanisms within the governments that where we had this discussion and we push that labor time price down as much as possible, as much as reasonably possible, that does not even touch sides compared with the corporate mechanisms of reducing labor time.
You don't know that deniability until you engage in those fine-tuned debates.
Can I point out an issue that might be cropping up a little bit that's a little hidden in this conversation?
Just one second. Let me finish this off. What I'm pointing to here, Travis, is a scaling issue, right? So how do you scale and manage the decisions of thousands of people? In the private system, we leave those decisions to those people. We go, you come do these services. Now, I'm willing to pay you this much. Are you happy to do these services for this price? And then that person goes and decides by themselves, okay, I need money for this. I need money for that. This is what's important in my life. This is what I need money for. And you know what? I need $30,000 a month and you're offering $28,000. Maybe if I sacrifice the coffee every morning, I can get down to $28,000 a month and I can take the job. Or I come to you and say, listen, I can only do it for $30,000. You say, well, I can go up to $29,000, but you're going to have to come down to $1,000 and sacrifice something. The facilitation of what I'm sacrificing times 1,000, I don't see how the government does that more effective than the individual citizens doing it themselves.
What happens is that what's happening here is you're not seeing how the government can come to like a reasonable level, and you are also presupposing that getting the absolute cheapest price is necessarily good for the country, and I'm not convinced, because when it is the government making money for the people essentially off the healthcare system, all of that is coming back into the system, right? In one way or another, like through like, let's say high wages for our emergency room physicians, or high wages for our nurses. And you're saying that the competition isn't there to drive these prices down, but the political competition is there. And I think that is where the competition happens in Canada when it comes to healthcare. And that should not be. And in Canada, we don't take that lightly. Like, we pay a lot of attention to that, to the competing policies of how they are going to manage the healthcare budget. It's not.
You see, the problem there is you're leaving the ordinary public, which we've already agreed the reason you want this healthcare system is they cannot be relied on to make responsible decisions. You're leaving that decision in the hands of the ordinary public, as opposed to a private company where you have a CEO that's dedicated 30 years to the practice of medicine and knows where they can shave costs and where they can bring it down and where they can increase the quality.
Our government is doing that. And they've been at this since Canada was formed.
Yeah,
we have the full history to go off of, and the people are actively interested in those details. Like,
you're being inconsistent in your analysis of the population. There.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm saying it's a debated topic.
But you're presuming that people take on the personal responsibility of informing themselves properly about these healthcare policies to the point where
you are presuming that the CEO deniability. You're doing the same thing with the CEO, and I'm saying
I think I can make the statement they do it better than your average citizen.
But the average citizen isn't making the decision deniability. It's a collective.
But you said the nature of the competition is political competition. Political
yes.
Why do I feel like where you were talking about Wall Street bets isn't going to work before, now you're saying that it will, so long as it gets you healthcare? Sorry? And the mass choice and the mass ideas.
It's not. This has nothing to do with that.
What do you mean? It's the same type of system, isn't it? It's an economic model.
Yeah, but not.
We're talking about an economic model, and we're talking about game theory. It all fits. It's all the same stuff. It's just different labels.
Let's not get confused. We're talking about something specific here.
So Travis, I think a 30-year professional in the industry can judge something better than your average Joe in the street.
Okay, so let me answer that. Deniability. Yeah. It's not the average Joe in the street. It's the lead head surgeons in like Vancouver General Hospital. These are the people that are making the strong political arguments as to why we need to be supporting these particular candidates.
But they're not involved in your competition mechanism. Your competition mechanism is a political one. The mechanism that you're competing for is votes. So what's happening?
But the political
these experts are advising the politicians, and the politicians are forming policies. They're communicating that policy to the general public to compete for votes. That comes in it a presupposition that the general public is going to be educated enough and diligent enough and take on the personal
deniability. It's the same it's the same presupposition, and this is why I was trying to tell everyone from the beginning. This actually is a moral discussion. It's the same thing you're doing, presupposing that the CEO is going to make a better decision than the voting electorate and the governing system of the country.
Yeah.
And in Canada, that's just the governing system. People care about the well-being of society in Canada when they're voting. So even if they are misinformed on finer details, the policies and how they are going to improve certain elements of healthcare are going to be written out as crystal clear as possible, just like a CEO might deliver their information. But it's not, and this is why game theory is not a perfect rule. It's ideally, yes, you will want these heads to make these good decisions for the country, but it's not necessarily gonna work out that way. Just like in Canada, when you do vote in, whoever, and they don't follow through on policies, you're going to be like, damn, they didn't follow through on those policies, and these are the reasons they gave. But I think these reasons are insufficient. So in the end, it's like, until someone can make like with you, deniability, you say, well, I'm not a fan of the Canadian healthcare system, but I'm sure there's a better system out there. As far as I can tell, based on the healthcare systems that exist around the world, Canada does it best for the people, and meaning that when something, because you were also talking about, saving money, conserving, being in control of your own money. If people are not good, which in general people aren't, I mean, the United States is a good example of this, at saving up for when a wrench is thrown into their life, that's the thing that the Canadian healthcare system circumvents. It gets ahead of it. It doesn't. It's not even a reality for Canadian citizens to have to deal with something like that, and I think that's a good thing.
I'm not so sure, but like just to clarify something here, there is a better system out there, and if I were to rank order the systems, I'd say you've got a free market capitalist system with true competition levels is better than a socialized healthcare system, is better than a fully privatized, monopoly regulated healthcare system. That's how I'd rank order them. So yes, you can perfectly make the statement that Canada might be doing better than the rest of the world. I don't know if it's true, but let's assume it's true. The thing is, there are enough cases of they're minority cases, but there are enough cases in the medical sector of things going unregulated and unpatented, and the quality of that and the quality of that increasing, and the safety increasing, and everything you want in a medical product increasing, and the price decreasing, and enough examples of free market competition in non-medical related sectors where we see an increase in quality and a decrease in price, that to posit that if we made a concerted effort to bringing free market competition and increasing the rates of competition in the medical sector, that it would have a much better benefit than the Canadian system. The system I'm sort of foreseeing is, let's say it costs the Canadian taxpayer $100 to provide an insulin shot for whatever reason. And that shot under free market is $10. Now there's $90 more left for other medical treatments instead of spending $100 inefficiently on that medical treatment.
Yeah.
So,
so the inefficient, the inefficient
we're not
spending.
On the good
yeah. So
we agreed there. We just got different ways of getting.
Let me answer the inefficient spending thing, because what you're talking about is what is debated in healthcare all the time, like at the political level, and that's why I brought politics into this, because Canadians are interested to see what each side is saying about whether we are paying too much for these particular treatments, and that political competition and their research, there's an incentive there to actually look at the markets and to deliver the data to the people. And then if one side of the political spectrum is delivering inaccurate data or misleading data, the other side has an incentive to correct it and show how the other side made a mistake. And that seems to, like, if you look at the product models and how much we're paying for certain things, even at the government spending for the generalized healthcare, there isn't a problem like you are bringing up, that like that we're paying this absurd amount of money for things that in a capitalist system or a privatized system there wouldn't be that. It just isn't the case. And in Canada, we also leave opportunity for the privatized system to compete with the public system.
Yeah, but the private.
I wanted to point that out earlier. Keep in mind, Canada isn't a straight just the government does it all. They do have a privatized system in place to compare against. So you're not exactly talking against the exact opposite of what you want, deniability.
Right.
I wanted to point that out because you guys are going to talk past each other with that.
Yeah, no, and that's why I brought that up. Like literally first thing that there is there is a competition in the private sector. That does go on, and they're usually competing for the high-end clients, like I said, who don't want to wait a week for an MRI. If it's like, let's say a potentially cancerous lump, they don't want to wait a week. They just want the luxury of walking into a private clinic and getting it done right then and there. That's the reality. So,
but you see that doesn't provide the competition that I'm looking for. And what I mean by that is that in that system, let's say you have 10,000 people a month that need an MRI, right? If the government's taking care of 5,000 of them, then you've got 5,000 left. So when you have to pay off that MRI machine, right? It's a fixed assets. So instead of doing a calculation off of 10,000 possible MRIs, you're now doing a calculation off of 5,000 possible MRIs. The relative cost, the variable cost of each MRI once you've got the actual machine running is relatively nothing. So the cost of that MRI, just because the government's taking 50% of the market now goes up 50% to cover the cost of that machine.
Yeah, I think you have to take a look at how this is all debated and worked out in the country. I don't have all of the actual like fine tunings of like, okay, this MRI cost, which for Canadians is zero, but if you go to the privatized place, you're and I mean zero, and I mean zero. Yeah, just hold on. I mean zero. Listen. I'm saying zero in the colloquial sense of you're not being given a bill at the end. It's coming out of the taxes you've paid. Like everything, all of our public services, your policing is not zero. We all know that.
I think you'd be surprised at the cost of healthcare if it was properly deregulated, because you take something like heart surgery, right?
You can look at all the budgets online, by the way.
The surgeon is fairly free market because he exists in a labor market. He's competing with other surgeons. So in America, you can at least say there's competition for the labor price of the cost of the surgery. But then the actual machinery that's used, the heart monitor, the heart and lung machine, all that. Often there's one or two manufacturers in the sector, and they're charging way more than they need to charge for that machine because they are operating in a monopoly or a duopoly. They're operating with patent protection, so even if someone wanted to, they couldn't climb into the market and offer it at a cheaper price. So you now buy all this machinery for a hospital room that it costs unreasonably high. The whole reason a hospital stay is so expensive is to cover the cost of those machines and to cover the cost of the doctor's salaries. So the doctor's salaries are no problem because there's at least 1,000 heart surgeons. So they're going to be competing against each other. So you'll be sure that the price of the surgeon is the lowest possible someone's willing to offer it at the highest quality standard. But then when it comes to machinery, because of patents and regulations, and that is really the bulk of the cost, because hospitals have to cover the costs of using the machines and replacing these machines every 5 years.
So another thing, deniability, is when a country's buying bulk orders, like buying 50 new MRI machines or 100 new MRI machines, there is also some benefit to some leverage to that level of dealing as well. So I think deniability, you have a tendency to discount and try to find exactly why this system doesn't work. But what's going on is that game theory in economics and in economic systems is a good general rule, but it's not absolute. And Canada, the Canadian healthcare system, if you want to debate how Canada could have got a better deal on insulin or this particular thing, if only there was a privatized system at work, well, we do have the option for that privatized mechanism.
Can I make a much more potent argument with you, Travis? I would say that game theory would say that making your population healthier is going to make it function better, and game theory would dictate that you ought give everybody health care.
Well,
that's what I say. We're not disagreeing about that design.
No, that's what I was just about to say. I don't think deniability disagrees on that.
Yeah, but it's just,
what I'm saying is game theory, as I understand it, would say that Canada's system is probably the best system you can get. A private or a socialized version that everybody gets access to, with a side gig that drives innovation.
It says that the best outcome is to have at least 6 actors producing heart and lung machines.
And that's what the privatized section is doing.
Yeah.
No. Right now it's only 1 or 2 because of patent protection. So it's privatized, but it's not free.
So that's why deniability. I think the only disconnect here is that Canada has escaped. Canada is an anomaly to game theory when it comes to this, and I think it's hard to get there because you're quite cynical towards like politics being able to work out what you think the private market can only do, but I think that the way people actually are involved in politics and the way politicians use those actual money items of spending to show like what they want to do as opposed to the other guy. They weren't able to get this deal for the country, but this guy was, and this happens a lot with oil or let's say resource extraction in our company. This is a big one. I just think like all of that is worked out, and Canada generally gets really good deals and world market. We are paying world market wages for our people in healthcare, and I think it doesn't require that privatized model to dominate.
So why did Canada not come up with a vaccination or treatment strategy for COVID?
We do have one.
Fair.
We do have
That's
one.
not fair.
We do have
That's
one.
not a fair question.
But just by the way, we have developed and we are running trials. But to a point, deniability, Canada diplomatically relies on the United States for its innovation in situations like this. As anomalous as a pandemic is, Canada, in our diplomacy, we understand that the United States is the key developer for medicine, and we use that to our advantage in our diplomatic management of our country within the countries of the world, and we understand that. However, we still do have the innovation. Yes, it's much slower. Like Canada's rolling out and doing our trials right now, and our own Canadian vaccine won't be available until I think it's like this September. But we're still purchasing the available vaccines that everyone else is using. But there is obviously an argument to be made that the United States model is the best model for innovation. I think.
Yes.
100%. But I think you need to find the balance between that.
But Travis, when I look at a COVID vaccine, what I see happened was we had all this medical regulation that like made the time horizons required for a COVID vaccination impossible. And what countries around the world have done is they've relaxed regulations around medical devices, vaccinations, anything related to COVID. And we've seen a whole spring of innovation from the private sector as a result of this deregulation. I mean, here in South Africa, they specifically passed a emergency law saying that they will suspend regulatory requirements for healthcare products that aid in the treatments of COVID. And a scuba diver, he's just produced it, and he's trying to roll it out globally. They've just been put into clinical studies. He came up with a machine that's an adaptation of some scuba gear that can be used at home, that keeps the lungs at pressure inflated the same way an intubator will do.
Right.
It's not as effective as an intubator, but it's like a 25th of the cost of an intubator. The government slashed all the regulations, and for hospitals that are bleeding money, that have patients sitting on the sides, that have no ventilators to provide them, without any testing, without any government approval or regulation, these hospitals are allowed to buy them because they're saying, well, what the fuck's the point in regulation? People are dying in the aisles. Let's just bring this out, and if it helps even a little bit, we're grateful for it. They scrapped all the regulatory burdens, and this thing got innovated, and now it looks like it's going to change the entire treatment course of COVID. And the vaccinations worldwide, they're developed by private entities after the relaxation of regulations. I don't see how you can look at these scenarios and not go, well, let's deregulate the rest of the sector and see what else they can fucking fix.
Well, deniability, you don't have to be absolutist about it. Of course, debates on regulations should be ongoing, and whether they're necessary or not. And if you find a regulation,
game theory to find the best.
And if you want to fight for, this regulation's a piece of shit and it's getting in the way of wellness or innovation or whatever, then make the argument. I think that's democracy doing its work. But I think it would be foolish to say regulation by definition is bad, because I'm sure there are regulations out there that you would agree with.
When they are proffering regulation of public goods, yes.
Well, how about this? Like, someone shouldn't be able to just perform surgeries from their home without a license.
No, I think that's a bad regulation.
Really?
You think deniability, just to make sure, you are okay with me performing open heart surgery in my living room for fun?
I'm okay with that as well.
Not you specifically, but if a rich billionaire able to afford all the equipment and can set up their own private.
Well, no, but that's not what the question is.
Yeah, this slippery.
If it's not regulated, then I could choose to do it.
So hold on.
No one's going to go to you because they don't trust you. If you don't have the money and the equipment.
No, Mace.
If a rich billionaire wants to do it.
Mace, you're acting like People are smart.
Yes, unfortunately, people can be duped. You guys aren't thinking about the psychology of human beings. You can dupe someone into coming to get your open heart surgery just by some fool who is convinced some poor person.
Travis,
where is this
Travis,
this fool that's by himself that's unprotected from somebody?
I see them all on QAnon. Look no further.
Why don't they have parents that protected them or a social fabric that protected them? My thing is that if the person is that idiot that's going to go to a apartment building surgery, if they want
then just let them get wiped out. You're immoral.
If they choose to go on their own authority and go through life by themselves, yes. If there's always the option of asking for help and for people that are inept.
Some people can't. Some people don't know how to ask for help.
Where did this person come from? Where did this idiot come from that doesn't have his own sense?
I see millions of them and QAnon.
So let's say I walk up. Hold on, I've got a very real thing that actually might work. That's not facetious at all. So let's say that I walk up on a car accident and someone's got a compound fracture, and I've seen a couple YouTube videos, so I'm going to go ahead and try.
Yeah.
Under the current policy, I can be charged.
Yeah.
Try to reset the bone, throw the bone back into the skin, and do all that stuff. Try to perform as much surgery as I can on the location, rather than just slap a tourniquet on it.
Are they?
They're unconscious.
Well,
they're unconscious. I'm trying to save their life.
That's your criminal act.
I'm trying to save their life.
Fair that nobody asked or consented to.
I agree with that. If they're not conscious,
that's a regulation.
If they're not conscious, they can't give you permission to touch them, so you shouldn't touch them.
But that's a regulation. You're saying we should get rid of regulations.
Well, you guys, look. What Mace, what you just said.
That's what regulations are.
You guys,
regulations are law.
Mace.
Wait, stop, guys.
The ability to agree to consent.
Okay, hold on. Let's take a step back here. This is often a conflation that people make. When people argue, like I do, against government regulation, it's specifically against the government part of that word, that phraseology. It's the government doing the regulation because they are largely ineffective. When
I would respond with, who would you put in place?
There's many examples of private quality assurance in every system of life where the government doesn't regulate. We get private companies providing fact-checking, quality assurance, product reviews,
and charities.
And the thing you have to understand is just because the government's not regulating who can be a doctor and who can perform surgery does not mean that automatically the demand to know someone's competence before they perform surgery on you goes away. Obviously, people will have a demand to see some sort of proof of competency.
No,
right?
That's not obvious. No.
It is.
Millions of people do not understand the fundamentals of skepticism, deniability.
If there are people who are willing to go to some run-down apartment for heart surgery, society isn't going to miss them.
Yeah, see, that's just an immoral view of the value of one's life. I just don't share that.
Well, that's a myopic view of one quality to value someone's life. I would suggest that when you take somebody's freedom to fail away from them, their quality of life.
You're not taking away their freedom to fail.
You are.
You're not.
No, you're not.
You are.
There are some.
I think that people should be. If a person wants to go to a witch doctor for their cancer, I think they should have the right to.
They have that freedom. They do have that freedom.
You just said they need to have a license to do medical procedures.
Yeah, you're saying that they shouldn't have that freedom.
No, I said that there are pieces of legislation that need to be in place so that people cannot be hijacked. And there's a difference between if that shaman was performing open heart surgery, the government would come in and say, "You fucking idiot! You better fucking stop that, or you're going to jail forever." Or you've killed someone.
I think that the person that wants a shaman to do open heart surgery on them, they want to make that. I think it's a foolish decision. I also think it's a foolish decision to do crack or fentanyl. But I think that people should have the freedom to determine their own course through life.
How would you?
It's a good general rule.
I don't necessarily
disagree with
that. My only question would be, how do you adjust that in an emergency situation?
So here's
what do you mean?
Like, Like if I'm bleeding out and I need level 4 care, like say I'm a burn victim and I need level 4 burn care, how do we pick which one I go to if I'm unconscious?
Who's paying for it?
That's my point.
The person paying for it decides.
That's my point.
That's
Under your system, what do you suggest?
I think that we should not have government providing charity, which would that would what it would be. If you're unconscious and you can't make your own decision and provide your own care, you would be receiving charity. And I think that the citizens should be able to have their own charity,
So anytime an ambulance picks up an unconscious person, that ambulance is performing charity to them?
Ambulances used to be run by hospitals, and hospitals used to be charities by mostly Catholic or other religious agencies.
Yeah,
but you qualified that with used to be. I'm talking about now.
I think that was a better. I also think it was better when charities,
nonprofits, right?
But how does that pick which one I end up going to, and how do I verify that the one that I'm being taken to is qualified under my standards?
You are unconscious and you have no right to choose.
And so I shouldn't be taken care of if I'm found on the side of the road.
You make your own choices. How did you get into that situation? What city?
Someone knocked me on the side of the. Someone knocked me across the face and took my wallet and ran away.
What city are you in?
New York City.
You have the choice.
Like how many qualifiers do I need to put in?
Villain, you are the motherload of bad ideas on this.
Is that I don't go into certain neighborhoods like.
I'm just asking for a particular question. I was walking in the middle of Times Square and I got knocked out. Okay.
Yes, it's your choice to be there. We'd have to discuss right now.
Okay,
so government controls the EMS in Times Square.
Okay, so villain,
you make choices. So I would, if I wanted to go get drunk, I would not go to a bar in Compton to get drunk. That's a choice I would make.
Okay, so I decided to take my wife and kids on a family vacation to New York City, and I was walking through the thing, and a fucking meteor fell out of the sky and hit me across the face, and I was knocked out.
Yeah.
Okay, all of the random fucking positive good of it happened, but I need care. How under your unregulated system am I chosen which one I go to?
You put yourself in an environment. It was up to you to decide what safety factors were in that environment. If that environment has witch doctors that run EMS,
silly. If you get struck by lightning or
if you go into a jurisdiction that has witch doctors running, let me finish my thought. I was asked the question. Let me finish. If you go into an area that you know their EMS is run by witch doctors, that's on you for going in that area. You could go vacation somewhere that has a higher standard of health.
You're missing my point. I'm not talking about witch doctors.
You can go to dangerous parts of Mexico for a vacation, and
that's
you know
not what I
you're
asked.
not going to get that
I gave you a particular thing.
Yes,
but I gave you a particular thing in New York City.
Yes,
you're equidistant from. Listen, slow down, villain. You're equidistant.
I'm answering
from 3 different things. No, you're not. You're going off on your version of my question. I want you to answer my question. When you're in the middle of Times Square on a positive family vacation, making positive memories, and a meteorite from the moon hits you in the head and you're unconscious. Okay? You're equidistant from a witch doctor, a former doctor who was licensed, a doctor that is licensed, and a quote doctor that has never been licensed.
Just like
how is that choice made if I'm unconscious? Which of the 4 I go to?
You made the choice beforehand. Just like if I want to go into the bush and do a walkabout by myself, I take the risk of not being able to be helped very easily. Let me answer my question.
I'm not asking whether you're helped or not. I'm asking which help it is.
Desired, let him
answer
roll.
the question I asked.
Let him roll for a second.
So just like if I were to go out into the bush, I'm taking risks on the fact that I'm probably not going to get care if something happens to me. It's going to be a long time, if ever, if someone can come help me. You chose to go into that geography that was equal distance between a witch doctor, a healthy doctor, and whatever else your other option is. You choose what environment you go to. You chose to go into that area that was equal distance to a witch doctor. You made the choice. It's your responsibility to provide your own safety, even if it's not going into questionable or dangerous areas, or providing your own insurance on ahead of time, so that like, hey, I'm going into this area. If this happens to me, I want this EMS agency to come save me from the witch doctor. Like that, it's simplified, but that's what it is. You are responsible for your choices and how you navigate through the world.
That didn't answer my question at all.
So Desire, if I could attempt to answer your question, I've got a very clear line here. And once again, I go back to the definition of products and services, the economic definitions. So when you're looking at emergency services specifically, a quasi-public good argument can be made. Because if there is a horrible accident on the freeway, or if there's two planes that crash into the Twin Towers, it has a negative effect on the entire society. And an argument can be made that there's benefit to all of society through cleaning it up as quickly as possible. Now, so when it comes to emergency services, I under a public good, specifically because there's a benefits in responding to emergencies and getting people out of the way and to the hospital and providing immediate stabilizing care.
Which hospital?
Right? No, under my vision, emergencies.
Neither of you have addressed the point. I agree with what you said.
My
question doesn't address anything you guys answered.
You already made the choice to go in that environment. So once you became disabled in that environment that you went into willingly, you are at the hand.
How does my body get to which one?
So whoever comes to you, you make.
So I don't get to choose.
No, you're on.
So I could end up at the witch doctor against my idea, against my wishes.
And you could have.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. You finally answered my question.
I answered that a while ago.
No, you didn't.
You could have mediated that by choosing not to go into an environment where you're going to be possibly at the hands of a witch doctor.
Okay, so you must always know who's practicing and who's licensed and who's not licensed in every area of every place you'll ever travel in your life.
There are
that's what you're saying is
there
needed.
are unknowns in life, but you are responsible for your actions.
Okay, great. Now, I agree with you. You're 100% right. Now,
let deniability take back the room.
Because right now, the regulations are in place to ensure that whenever you get into an emergency situation, you will end up with a qualified person.
Is the scenario you are describing, I am arguing, is a public good. The government has a business regulating that. They should be the arbiter of who is of quality because it's a clear public good. And as
so they must. Before, so in order to practice any medicine, you ought to be regulated by the government. Is what you're saying?
You get adverse outcomes, and you are in the process of describing one of those adverse outcomes. This is why public goods should be managed and paid for through taxes by the government, but private.
So you're arguing for a public universal healthcare system.
Services, specifically because you're dealing with the catastrophe you're talking about. That ought to be regulated by the government in the same way the police service is regulated by the government. In the same
you're missing the whole point.
Desired, he has you muted.
Okay, I'm going to unmute you now. Oh, sorry, I just muted. I didn't serve mute. Okay,
yeah.
But yeah. So you're setting up a case.
You've missed the complete point. Once I'm already in the ambulance, the ambulance has me picked up. They've done the initial treatment. All of that is democratized, regulated, and I know that those people are qualified and have the nursing or the paramedic license. Great. Yeah. Cool. Answer. Got it. I agree with you. That's all fine and dandy. That has absolutely zero to do with any question I asked. Now, once I'm in the ambulance, where do they take me, and how do I verify that ambulance will take me to someone I deem qualified enough to treat me?
So I've worked in EMS for more than 17 years. That's not even a government regulation question. That's a simple logistics question.
Hold on. Let me respond specifically to that.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Hold on, guys. If you guys want to go head to head somewhere on this, just it's deniability's room. So deniability.
Go ahead, deniability.
Yeah. So desired. You're still making the case of in this unregulated system, right? We know that public goods, if they are unregulated, you get negative outcomes. What you're describing is a negative outcome, right? Now, if the government regulates emergency responses and emergency services, the obligation should be to remove the patient from the scene of the accident and take them to somewhere where they can stabilize them
How do I verify that person is qualified to stabilize me? That is my only question.
You're unconscious. You don't get to.
One of the things about being stabilized.
That's the point of government regulation, to protect people from that happening.
There's government regulation.
Stop. One of the things about being stabilized is you are brought to a conscious state.
No.
Where you can choose.
No.
Right?
That is not stabilizing.
That's not true.
That absolutely is not stabilizing. Stabilizing is keeping you alive.
What I'm saying is you should receive care in an emergency services ward until you
are
conscious and you can make.
How do I have assurance that emergency service ward is up to snuff without government regulation on all emergency wards?
You don't. The actual answer of how that works is that you get taken to the closest, best facility. If you're conscious,
who regulates that?
If you're conscious, you can override that, and you can demand in most states to go somewhere else.
Yep.
But the injuries are taken into account, and the capabilities of the different hospitals are taken into account, and it's actually largely to do with the EMS provider, their decision.
Okay.
They get to decide what they think is in your best interest.
So now, under you guys' system, we have a system where not all doctors are regulated, and anybody can practice medicine if they want to. On top of an emergency response system that is regulated, that needs to have regulated people and paramedics in place. Now, if that's the case and those paramedics are regulated, then does that mean that they become unregulated and can take you to a witch doctor? Who sets the regulation on what those regulated people can take you to or not take you to between the regulated and not regulated?
You can like go down a logic trail and like try to.
No, this is game theory. This is how game theory works.
But I'm talking. I'm coming from this at a value point of view, and I think that the free will of the individual person and the freedom is worth more than security. So I do think that if a community wanted to have a witch doctor EMS program, they should be able to do that, and it's nobody else's business other than that community. And if you choose to travel through that community, even if you know or unknown, you're making the choice to travel through the world. Like, there are risks associated with that. Like, you can't force
and we mitigate those risks
the way you
by
want to.
Collectively deciding that we will have a system in place that we can trust to take care of us should we not be able to take care of ourselves.
Yeah,
that's why the medical field profession is regulated.
I fundamentally
disagree
with that.
If it's, what do you mean?
I fundamentally disagree with that. That's a philosophical outlook on how the world should be, and I don't think it should be.
No, that's how it is.
That's how we've done it.
That's not philosophical. That's how it actively is.
I also think that the medical field worked a lot better, and it was more affordable, and it had more innovations when it wasn't regulated.
There was a lot of neglect as well.
I will say that it needs a lot less regulation, but completely deregulating like you're claiming is not feasible, specifically for the emergency situation.
I think the fundamental core of this argument is a value claim of freedom over security. I don't think it's moral to demand other people to live the way that you want them to live so that you get more security in your feelings or actual safety. I think that you need to take on your own responsibility for your safety, and you can't force other people to be regulated the way that you think they should be regulated.
I'm talking about doctors and the ability to practice medicine. This has nothing to do with the insurance or the way we pay for it. You are claiming that you don't need to have a doctorate or pass, the MCATs and go to school and get your degree and get board certified and all that to practice medicine. You said that you wanted to deregulate so far that I could go out and perform medicine if some idiot would allow me.
Yes, that's what my stance is.
So my question to you is feasibly, economically make that work when you've agreed that emergency services ought to be regulated. How does a free market? Hold on. How does a free market?
I did not agree to that.
Okay, so you think that EMS shouldn't be regulated either?
I think people should be able to have free association and form their communities the way they want to and live the way they want to. I don't think that outside forces should be able to tell other people how to live.
Then vote that way.
The government,
but it seems overwhelmingly that people agree that we want to have fire and medical and stuff trustworthy and capable of standing up to the city's needs.
I think that when a community has the free association to live the way they want to and protect their communities the way they want to, they often provide more care than a paid regulated person does.
That's why
a lot of the reason why we have so much regulation in the EMS field isn't because people have voted for that. It's because people have politicians have implemented mandatory housing and other insurance to be forced on people.
Hey, you guys,
and those insurance companies get enough power to where they get to decide what regulations happen.
If you guys want to continue this one-on-one, just head over to a different voice chat, because the idea of this room is a group discussion. So
I just wanted to put one thing into this too. I just wanted to say that the only I think you could make a system like this work. I'm not sure if I would totally agree with it. It would be like, instead of like having hard licenses, it'd be like a soft license. Like, the government thinks this guy is a great surgeon and you should go to him first. You can have other people do it, but they won't be government approved. They won't be charged for, because they're not government approved or anything. It's just those EMTs are going to go to the guys who are government approved. That's basically what it would work. So I'm not sure if that would be a great system, but that's an answer for that.
And this might be news to some of you, but most board certifications are run by the private sector. There are private non-profit organizations run by actors from the private sector and specifically not by government. You get government medical licensing, but the board certification is a private quality assurance. So when you talk about self-regulation, we're talking about exactly that. And the fact of the matter remains that the highest qualification for a doctor in America is a private qualification. It is not a governmental qualification.
True, but there are many private organizations that do that sort of thing, and the government says this organization will be the standard, and you will go through this private organization to get that that certification.
So they kind of co-opted and say this is now the government standard.
Yeah, but they shouldn't do that. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is remove the government's regulation on that, because these entities
Isn't that specifically what you're calling for? Is the market claiming it and then the government saying, yep, they're the best, we'll pick them?
No, I don't want the government saying the best, because you don't get the best. What you end up is with a monopoly. And as we've already discussed, monopolies trend towards corruption. What we want is a couple of different board certifications. We want a couple of different organizations climbing into it, making sure and keeping an eye on the other organizations, because that's the only way you guarantee that there's not going to be any sort of malfeasance.
My approval system would keep
one of the
that.
things that I would.
Oh, sorry.
One of the things that I was just gonna jump in with all this, like government regulation should only attach the bare minimum, and like that's like life, limb, eyesight, for example. Like that's like the bare minimum. Now
that's where I would say I agree with that.
Well, I mean, but then we start getting into other things, and I think Villain has a point to an extent, and what I think we're not in deniability is really adding into the argument here is this idea of professional certifications or professional organizations that have their own system of ethics or something to that effect that are pushing the quality that essentially these doctors or these organizations are entering into willingly without the regulatory oversight of the government. Because here's the thing, when you have regulations, you have to have more lawyers. When you have more lawyers, you also have to have more quality people. You have to have more systems and checks. That costs money. So typically speaking, a professional organization is one of the best things. And to answer your question, I would look at it from this perspective. What is the equivalent of that in the New York area, for example? So another example I'll kind of look at is like the airline industries, for example. They come together and form little conglomerates. So like Delta works with whatever airline, United works with whatever airline, and they create a global network that you can travel on. I mean, the same different things can be applied to these